Welcome to Infinite Novel. Dive into epic alternate realities. All rights to original creators.
Chapter 29, CH29, Hinata's future path. So, what were you two talking about before I showed up? Ino asked while her fingers and brush still worked on Ren's hair, her grin widening when she saw Hinata blushing and averting her gaze. She was smelling a good rumor and she was ready to pounce. Unfortunately for her, Ren had other plans. It's good that you came. He spoke, getting the attention of the two girls. I was thinking about having you two consider what you want to specialize in when it comes to your combat capabilities. We will branch your training once you make up your mind. What? More training? Ino whined. No. We are training enough as is. Hinata quickly changed the topic. Hinata just snorted at her and looked at Ren in curiosity. What do you think I should specialize in? Hearing her, Ino huffed and petulantly pouted but also reluctantly spoke what she said. Gimme some ideas. Preferably something that will go great with my hair. She gently poked Ren's head with a finger. Rolling his eyes, Ren unsealed two chakra papers from the seal on his wrist and put them on the table. Let's see what chakra nature you two have first, I guess. Hinata reached for one of them but stopped when Ino spoke. Don't bother. Mine is earth. Dad tested me when I was like 10 or so. She then smirked at Hinata. How come the Hyuga princess doesn't even know her chakra nature? Practicing elemental ninjutsu is beneath the Hyuga clan. Hinata dismissively said, but her eyes betrayed her excitement as she grabbed one chakra paper and pushed her chakra into it, making it crinkle up. Lightning, huh? Heh. I am your counter. Ino cheerily grinned at Hinata with an eye smile. Shucks. I can still punch your teeth in. Hinata nonchalantly shrugged, making Ino scowl. Alright Ino, that is enough. Ren patted the girl's wrist, a bit reluctantly signaling her to stop playing with his hair and motioning her to sit behind the table. Thank you. He threw her a grateful and fond smile, making the blonde return it with a barely visible blush as she sat down. Honestly, he didn't know if she did a good job or if his hair looked worse than after being hit by a lightning jutsu, but he didn't care right now. Specialization was a serious business that was going to affect their whole life. Every single ninja in existence specializes in a few things. Itaki had his Manjikyo and Genjutsu. Sasori had his puppets. Orochimaru is a freak of nature. Kisame likes fishy swords. Deidara is a terrorist. Even Sarutobi, the professor, specialized in ninjutsu. Every single notable ninja had a clear skill set containing one or two ninja fields they heavily focused on. This was not something told to kids at the academy. They were supposed to figure it out for themselves, but Ren thought the whole practice stupid. Many genin did not understand this. They tried to learn everything at once, ending up not learning anything at all, or learning many things half-heartedly, which didn't help them much. A person needed direction. Ninja fields were very broad subjects. There was too much to learn and learning techniques took a lot of time and dedication. It wasn't something where one could just dabble in everything and expect to become strong. That's not how it worked. For example, ninjutsu specialists specialized in ninjutsu, but they also specialized in one, maybe two elements. They could spend their whole lives perfecting their elemental chakra control in said elements and learning corresponding elemental techniques, and most still didn't manage to reach mastery. Even with Byakugan, Ren doubted that Hinata would get to the second stage of lightning exercises before a half year was up. In the anime, Naruto breezed through most of his training. Tree walking? Week. Raisen? Month. Wind chakra control? Was it a week? Or a month? And he got Raisen Shuriken for free out of that deal. Senjutsu? PFF, another month at worst. The kid learned in a month things others needed their whole lifetime to figure out. He was a hacks character through and through. I think Hinata should lean on her Byakugan advantages and specialize in medical and lightning ninjutsu. Ren rubbed his chin. I think I will teach you how to apply exploding seals on weaponry with just your chakra. It shouldn't take long with your Byakugan even if you are a novice at the sealing arts. He continued. He wasn't going to teach her the sealing arts. Her family would definitely not appreciate it. But making her capable of applying one type of seal should be no problem. Her eyes will help immensely in that endeavor too. And then I will have you learn how to throw senbon. You could massively enhance throwing speed and range with lightning chakra, and with your Byakugan, aiming should not be a problem even if the target is kilometers away. That sounds kinda terrifying, to be honest. Hinata admitted, not knowing how to react. It sounded like a very dangerous skill set to have. She honestly never thought about using her Byakugan for long-range attacks. It wasn't something her clan did, but clearly, her teacher had other ideas. It will take a lot of effort and time to make it as good as it sounds. You up for it? Ren asked with a challenging smile, making Hinata bashfully nod. If you do well, I will give you a storage seal like this. Ren pushed chakra into his wrist and made the storage seal tattooed there to appear on his skin and fill it with senbon. I'd like you to be able to unseal a senbon, apply the exploding seal, apply lightning chakra, and throw it, all within a split second. Now, technically, mastering this would make Hinata a Jonin level combatant as long as her body was up to par in physical prowess. But the gravity seals would ensure that. Hinata was raised in a ninja household and she understood just how deadly the combo Ren was speaking about could be. A pleased smile appeared on her face as she spoke. You were not joking when you said you were going to help me. She took a deep breath. I will do my best. Of course. Ren nodded, glad she seemed so determined. They had 3 years to make her strong enough that the Hyuga elders would crap their pants just by thinking about putting that slavery seal on her. Ren was going to make it into reality. Hey, what about me? Ino grumpily butted in, and looking at her, Ren remembered the little assignment he gave the girls. Before that, why don't you two show me what is your progress with the hair techniques? He hurriedly changed the topic, inwardly worrying he would again forget if he didn't bring it up now. Not to mention, it gave him a few precious minutes before he had to tell Ino he had no freaking idea what she should specialize in. Well, that was false. He did have ideas. Just nothing as fleshed out as Hinata's future path. And then there was the whole conversation about gravity seals and the requirements to apply them on her. Yeah, Ren was happy to delay it, even if only for a few more minutes. The girls exchanged challenging looks and Hinata jumped the gun first as her hair suddenly grew, reaching her lower back while the bangs falling around her face reached her stomach. Unfortunately, the bangs previously covering her forehead also grew, now covering her whole face, making Ren laugh at her as she groaned in frustration from behind the curtain of her hair. Well, it's not a problem. It was just a week. You will get better control with more practice. Good job. He tried to comfort her, but his snickering was probably not helping, nor did Ino's unceasing giggling. Scowling, Hinata quickly retracted her hair, ending in the same hairstyle she had before. She clearly practiced getting her hair to its previous state a lot because Ren could not see a difference from before. Giving her a nod of acknowledgement, Hinata grinned as Ren turned to Ino, who smugly smirked. Her blonde hair shrunk into a hairstyle reminiscent of Samui as she tried to imitate Hinata's hair. Then Ino took out a rubber ball from her handbag and threw it behind herself. Her hair instantly grew toward it as it became more rigid and sharp, skewering the ball. The tendril of her hair skewering the ball twisted in the air and grew some more, bringing the deflated remainder of the ball back on the table before retracting and becoming silky smooth again. Ino then rearranged her hair into its previous length and had it style itself into a ponytail on its own. She wasn't done showing off as her ponytail grew again and started putting a serving of curry on her plate. Once done, it retracted again and she dug in, innocently looking at Ren with a clear, praise me, expression as she ate. Ren was a bit speechless. The girl had surpassed him when it came to the control of her hair with chakra. He couldn't help but give her applause, which made her expression even more smug as she now condescendingly gazed at the scowling Hinata. But, just this once, Ren let it be. Ino deserved the praise. Author note, oh my god, I made a mistake. I wonder how many people will notice. Yes, it was pointed out to me that lightning beats earth. So, just take it as Ino being a kid who hadn't graduated from the academy and hadn't trained in elemental jutsu yet. She was just wrong. Happens to the best of us. I would know. Feel free to leave a scathing comment about how this author knows nothing about Narutoverse if you absolutely must. LOL. Chapter 30, ch 30, Ino's future? No idea. As for you, Ino. Ren spoke after the girls had finished bickering, I have no idea. I smiled at the girl, making her scowl. But before she could open her mouth in protest, Ren continued, you are my student for just a few days, so I can't say I have a properly fleshed out idea about what you should specialize in. He tried to mollify her. I guess I will just focus on my clan jutsu for now. Ino unhappily grouched, stabbing her fork into the rice on her plate, playing with her food like a child. Chuckling at how petulant she looked, Ren hummed, I do have some ideas and things I want you to try doing with your clan specialty, but I have no idea if your clan practices will allow you to do them. I'll speak to you about them later. Maybe the ideas will help you. He helplessly shrugged. The Yamanaka clan practiced yin energy and mental arts. Ren still remembered that in some stories from his past life, they were depicted as the psychologists of the village. That was not true in this reality, however. The Yamanaka mental jutsu had only one purpose, and that was to attack the victim's mind. They were no mind healers. They trained to understand their opponent's mind, and then control it or destroy it. That didn't mean they could sit people down and give them meaningful advice on how to deal with their trauma or heal mental illnesses. That was pretty much the complete opposite of what they tried to accomplish with their techniques. Worse yet, the concept of mental health was more of a myth than a fact. If asked, most people would just say it is something made up that does not exist. It was just one more thing that hammered down for Ren the fact that this was not the modern times he was part of in his past life. He didn't know when psychology became a serious thing in his past life. But he'd say the people of his current world look at these issues in the same way as the people in his previous life did before psychology became a normal, accepted thing. Ren thought it was a shame. Kakashi was traumatized as fuck. Sasuke had issues due to his family's massacre. Literally over half of the ninja populace had at least one trauma of their own, and at least a tenth of Konoha ninjas were psychopaths. The ninja career was not a very good thing when it came to mental health. There was a reason why so many jonins had a quirk, why guys shouted about youth, why Kakashi was late to everything and read porn in public, or why Asuma smoked several packs a day. It was simply their coping mechanism, but there was no solution to it, so these problems were put to the side and ignored. The ninjas had to continue working and going on missions, for the greater good of Konoha. Ever wondered why Sasuke was allowed to live alone in his clan compound? Or why he wasn't given therapy? This was the reason. It's not that he is some super ultra genius who can trick Inoichi Yamanaka into believing that he is a completely mentally healthy normal boy after seeing his family and clan massacred by his brother. Nor is it that Konoha higher UPS can't make one, not even a 10-year-old child, actually go to his therapy sessions. If they had a way to help him become more mentally stable so they wouldn't need to worry about him going off the deep end, the Hokage himself would have carried Sasuke's ass to the therapy. The Uchiha clan bloodline was that important to the village, after all. but they didn't have a way to help. In the same vein, the village did not have the means to help many of their other ninjas become mentally stable. What Ren wanted Ino to try was another thing Yamanaka's did not practice, ideas he had from reading fanfictions in his past life. For example, Ren knew that Ino could enter her mind like Naruto could enter his seal. The rudimentary exercises Inoichi gave him were a very big clue to that. But, did the time pass quicker in her mind? Could she use that to learn things faster? Could she gain perfect recall? The Yamanakas were so hyper-focused on entering the mind of somebody else that they seemed to completely ignore the possibilities of what they could do with their own. But who knows? Maybe Ren's ideas wouldn't pan out. He wasn't Yamanaka and didn't know their mental techniques. He could only give Ino suggestions and wait. He didn't consider that a meaningful help for her development as a kunoichi. I already made you seriously train your body and stop your dieting. I think that's all your father really wanted from me. Ren told Ino, but he could clearly see in her expression that she wasn't liking what she was hearing. He could understand that. He gave Hinata an entire roadmap on how to make her into a badass kunoichi, so it is only natural that Ino would not be satisfied with a half-hearted, "Dunno. Just do more push UPS. Made Kenjutsu, but that's not something I could help you with either." Ren admitted. Kenjutsu? Ino looked at Ren as if he had grown a new head. "Me. Swords are cool and it would go great with your hair," Ren jokingly said, repeating what she told him at the start of the conversation. Besides, Hinata butted in, "It would give you an offensive option that doesn't include trying to scratch your opponent's face with your nails, bimbo. Less broken nails will make you prettier. Sounds like a win-win for you." Ren shot her a small disapproving look at that. He loved her newfound confidence among friends, but right now was not the time to try getting a rise out of Ino. Ino, however, didn't take Hinata's words to heart and reached toward her, scratching her on the hand with her nails, getting a loud, "Hey," from Hinata. Ren's disapproving look melted into a smile. Mostly because he knew that Hinata had seen the scratch coming from a mile away and had just let Ino do it. "Shut up." Ino rolled her eyes at Hinata. "Adults are speaking." She sniffed in mock contempt, but Hinata just turned her gaze toward Ino's modest chest. "Adults? She raised her eyebrow at Ino, her lips set in a small innocent smile. Ino instantly scowled and Ren noticed her eyes flicker to Hinata's bust for a second before they narrowed in envy. But instead of throwing another retort at Hinata, she just turned toward Ren. "Why Kenjutsu? Yamanakas need both of their hands for our clan jutsu," she asked, somewhat forcefully as she tried to ignore Hinata. "But your clan jutsu should not be the only skill you will have. You should work on increasing your options." Ren spoke slowly, giving proper thought to his words. "You are nimble. You are also very good with your hands. Hinata has an advantage with Byakugan, but you are not too far behind her when it comes to throwing weapons. Your reaction speed is also amazing for your age." He narrated what he had noticed about her during her training. Ino was certainly going to be a speed-based fighter. She was lean, flexible, and with proper training, she would be very fast. Her body was not built for strength, however. Ren wondered if that was due to some deficiency of Yang Chakra or something, since every Yamanaka he had seen was similar to Ino in this regard. He inwardly shook his head to clear his thoughts. That didn't matter right now. He considered what he could do with her natural inclination toward speed. It would have been great if she could be like Suzuki, but her earth nature threw a wrench into that dream. But as a speed-based fighter, it would still be better for her to master some kind of weapon. She was young now, had a jonin as a father who could easily get her skilled tutors, and had a lot of free time. It was the best time for her to start learning a new skill. "I guess I'll pester Dad to get me some Kenjutsu lessons." Ino agreed, but it was obvious she was still doubtful. But Ren just helplessly shrugged. "Training to get faster and learning a sword can make you dangerous, especially if you pair them with the hair jutsu you just learned. You can get close to your opponent, slash at him with your sword, which he will definitely evade, only to be skewered by a tendril of your hair." He described an example of how that skill set could be used. Honestly, the speed at which she mastered the hair jutsu made Ren wonder if ninjutsu wasn't the best direction for her. But Yamanaka's did not have overly great chakra reserves that would make his work as her tutor much harder. Hearing Ren, Ino grimaced in disgust. "Joy. Getting blood out of my hair will definitely be a great experience," she grumpily complained as she crossed her arms over her chest. But her tense shoulders relaxed at getting at least some direction. "All right, I guess it can work for now. But you better come up with something more." She gave Ren a look similar to an angry chihuahua. "At this rate, Suzuki will get far more interested in Hinata than me." Ren just rolled his eyes while Hinata snorted. "You will need far more than that if you want to keep up with me," Hinata said, giving Ren a questioning look, silently asking him a question. He sighed and nodded at her. He appreciated that she kept the gravity seals a secret. But yes, he didn't want Ino to feel neglected later on when she inevitably discovered their existence, so he was going to give them to her too. Still, he was reluctant to breach the subject. "What's that supposed to mean?" Ino exclaimed, affronted, probably misunderstanding something. But Ren wasn't going to wonder what went on in the head of that lovesick girl. Realizing he probably wouldn't get a better opportunity, he decided to bite the bullet. "She is talking about gravity seals." With another sigh, Ren started the lengthy explanation. "As my student, I am willing to give them to you, but..." The conversation about them started from there. It was long, difficult, and embarrassing. The only saving grace was that Ino was a clan kid and understood the secrecy around personal techniques. Now Ren just needed to have a similar conversation with her father because he'd rather not paint a seal on his baby girl without his permission. And boy, was he not looking forward to explaining the circumstances to Ino's overprotective father. Chapter 31, ch 31, warning: it was the third day since Ren returned to Konoha and he was currently at his home in the capital of the Land of Fire, standing next to his kitchen table with a shadow clone standing on the other side of the table as they both focused their chakra on a seal spread on a massive scroll on the table. It was finally the time for him to take a small revenge on Danzo, but Ren had a very hard time keeping his focus. Everything was ready. The seals were in place. The opportunity was here. Danzo had a small meeting with some of his men in one of his underground bunkers. Ren had another shadow clone sitting at the Yakiniku-Q restaurant with Hinata for the alibi. He used it to teach her the basics of theory for his exploding seals to not waste time too. And yet, Ren just couldn't help but mentally come back to the conversation with Inoichi about Ino and giving her the gravity seals that happened yesterday. He expected Inoichi to go into his overprotective dragon dad mode and start spewing flame left and right in righteous parental fury, chasing Ren out of his house with a broom, or something. But Inoichi? He was like, "Oh, you need my daughter naked to apply your seal? Who cares, pussy? Get on with it." Of course, the man didn't say it in these exact words, but the look he had given Ren, it told Ren exactly what Inoichi was thinking at that moment. Ren had forgotten what the Yamanaka clan's specialty was. Or rather, he just didn't do the obvious mental jump to connect the dots. The Yamanakas were predominantly information gatherers. And it was an awkward topic, but seduction missions were a big part of that. Yamanakas could do seduction missions without the whole gotta sleep with the target to get him to spill the secret thing. With their mind techniques, they just needed to get the target alone in a room and knock him or her out with poison. Their clan jutsu would do the rest. They still needed to do the seducing part of the mission to get the target alone though. That's why their clan trained the kids from early on, molding them not to be some quivering shy mess. Ren realized this was the reason why Ino took the whole explanation about the gravity seals so well. He was all blushy and awkwardly embarrassed when he was explaining it to her while she just sat there, cool as a cucumber, and gave him a smile full of amusement. Ren's eyes twitched when he remembered all her questions and how awkward they made him feel. She was probably having a blast teasing him. Inoichi was grateful too. He realized what a boon the seals would be for Ino, and much to Ren's exasperation, the fact he could not give Ren anything in return because the other Yamanaka jutsu were a clan secret made the man actually embarrassed. Honestly, Ren had a hard time comprehending the clan's mentality. If it wasn't some slavery bullshit and unhealthy focus on traditions, then it was preparing kids for seduction missions from a young age, or teaching kids to try to eat their way to an early grave before reaching mid-teens, or having kids live like dogs to bring out their instincts to the surface. And let's not even start with Abaramis. Those are better forgotten because no, their bodies did not naturally contain the space for their bugs. That was artificially created during their childhood. It was no wonder they all seemed repressed. And they say Naras are weird. Really, the lazy slackers were actually pretty chill about the training their kids received. They made them play shogi and tend to the deer. Shaking his head to focus on the current issue, Ren focused on the seal and instantly got a mental image of a dark room with Danzo sitting behind a table. From the angle, Ren could tell that the seal was placed on one of Danzo's operatives who were currently kneeling in front of him, probably receiving orders. Unfortunately, Ren hadn't yet figured out how to add audio to his spying seal. Getting visuals was hard enough as it was. But if Gaara could make a functioning eye out of freaking sand, then there was no way Ren could not make a seal transmit vision. Looking around, Ren didn't see Sai and released a relieved sigh. He didn't want to butterfly Ino's future boyfriend out of existence. But he wouldn't stop his plan for the pale kid if he was here. Having an opportunity like this would be hard to get again. Danzo had around 30 of his operatives in the room with him. Ren doubted that happened often. Contrary to popular belief, Danzo did not have an entire army of ninjas. If he did, he wouldn't need to be so sneaky with his moves. The man had around 100 ninjas under his employ, but the number was always fluctuating. On one hand, training a competent ninja was hard and took years. Many didn't make it to the end of Danzo's training. On the other, with the missions Danzo had his subordinates do, they tended to die pretty often. The old cripple actually did almost backbreaking work for Konoha's safety. Well, his little slaves did, but that was beside the point. What they were doing wasn't nice. Danzo's methods were appalling and he was a total scum, but he got results. IWA was growing too strong? Roots sabotaged them. Kumo was testing a new weapon? Roots sabotaged them. Kiri's civil war was drawing to a conclusion? Root, well, that's how it went. Root was fanning the flames of conflict in other countries, just so that Konoha stayed safe with a spotless reputation. Of course, there could be an entire debate about the need for Root's existence. They didn't do anything different from what the assassination squads of actual Umbu did. Technically, they did not need to exist. After all, their purpose was already being fulfilled by the Umbu. Then again, maybe Ren was missing something? Oh, well, it's not as if it mattered right now. With a sad sigh and a smattering of guilt, Ren triggered a specific part of the seal on the table. Instantly, several of the 30 kneeling men started having angrily glowing red seals spread throughout their bodies. Panic suddenly spread through the room and Danzo hastily stood up from his chair with wide eyes. The visual feed from Ren's seal abruptly cut off as Ren's exploding seals went off. Back in Konoha, the entire village suddenly shook as if hit by a powerful earthquake. Ren's shadow clone had to catch Hinata to prevent her from falling from her seat. It was as if the ground heaved several times. Well, that explains where Danzo's bunker is located, I guess. Ren's clone thought to himself with a small chuckle. Apparently, it was directly under Konoha, and making the exploding seals use the victim's chakra to overcharge themselves before exploding had an unexpectedly noticeable effect. Back in Ren's house in the capital, Ren took a cup of hot chocolate and took a sip in celebration. The job was done. He worked at the barrier core. He knew the layout of the seals protecting most secret entrances to Konoha. Doing this wasn't even hard since he was one of the guys usually doing the maintenance on these seals. All he had to do was have a clone attach a hidden mix of exploding and spying seals to the security seals on the entrances and have his seals latch onto anybody with a certain feature as they put their hand on a security seal on the entrance to pass through. Thankfully, there was nobody other than Danzo's cronies crazy enough to apply a seal to their tongue. Ren used that as an identifier. Everybody with that feature passing through the entrances became Ren's eyes thanks to his spying seals, and eventually, they would be his instrument of terror by becoming unknowing suicide bombers. Ren's additions to the secret entrances were only there for 2 days, and even then, he was already a bit nervous that they would be noticed. Because of that, Ren only managed to infect around 12 root operatives with his seals before he had his clone take them down. 8 of these operatives were in that room with Danzo. Ren hated doing this. Cosplaying as a terrorist was not his thing, but he was just one guy. One fresh Chunin with near zero influence. Danzo was the village elder with tens of Jonin and Chunin subordinates wholly loyal to him. He was the guy with connections to the daimyo court and several nobles. The guy who had many wealthy merchants in his pocket. Fighting fairly was never an option for Ren. But still, pissing off a sealmaster who had almost complete knowledge of the seal network of the village was a very stupid thing to do. Fortunately, Danzo had no idea Ren was this skilled with seals. He would probably suspect, but there would be nothing pointing at Ren, and he kind of hoped Danzo would think this was far beyond the capabilities of a fresh Chunin from the barrier core too, because he had no delusions. Danzo was not dead. At best, he had wasted one Sharingan for resurrection. However, several of his high-end subordinates died, and that will undoubtedly deal a massive blow to Danzo's organization. He will probably need months, if not years, to recuperate his losses. It will give Ren precious time to get stronger and make more seals for self-protection. The next time Danzo sent assassins after him, he would be more than ready. This was unfortunately just a warning shot. Chapter 32 Ch 32 Danzo's dismay. Danzo Shimura sat in his office in his house, impassively looking at some documents with a composed poise. But inwardly, he was brooding. The attack on the root base yesterday was a disaster. He had lost 39 ninjas. Worse yet, since the attack hit the core of his base, among these 39 were some of his most capable subordinates. He will need at least 2 years to train their replacements to a similar level. The only saving grace in this ordeal was that Torun and Fu were on a mission, so they were not present during the meeting. Danzo had to admit that whoever attacked him was good. They managed to kill him too. And that made Danzo even more furious. Unlike capable well-trained ninja subordinates, Sharingan was a limited resource. And Danzo did not lose just one, but 2 of them yesterday, without even seeing the shadow of his opponent. He still had no idea who was responsible too. It was maddening. Restraining the urge to throw his coffee mug at the wall, Danzo took a subtle calming breath. Just remembering how he barely managed to cast his Inagi in time before the explosions ripped his body apart, only for the ceiling to collapse on top of him 5 seconds after he resurrected, wasting yet another Sharingan, was enough to make him furious. But he was a ninja, and letting himself be driven by his emotions was unbecoming. He was stronger than that. After the incident, when Danzo finally managed to dig himself out of the rubble of his previous base, he couldn't even rest. The village was put under a state of emergency, and Danzo was called for a council meeting the second he reached his home. He remembered he sat there, in the council room, frustrated as he listened to Hiruzen and his council going through the damage report and deciding how to deal with the natural disaster that hit Konoha. He couldn't even tell Hiruzen he was attacked, because Root was supposed to be disbanded. He couldn't even twitch in a wrong way because Hiruzen didn't become the Hokage by sheer dumb luck. Danzo knew his old friend was watching him like a hawk throughout the entire meeting. He probably suspected something. He was not stupid. Just old and too weary to act on his suspicions because he didn't want to deal with the outcome. Something Danzo used for all it was worth over the years. The meeting was a very uncomfortable few hours, and the fact he had to go through such an experience after living through his death 2 times did not help Danzo's sour mood at all. So, these are the most likely suspects, Danzo said, his voice carrying just the lightest touch of anger as he looked at the documents on his table. There were photos of several ninjas and info on them. Orochimaru, Jiraiya. He started reading the names, mentally going through the reasons why each individual would attack him. Many had a reason, but only a few had the means and skill to do something like this. After an hour and a half of going through the files, Danzo's eyes fell on a certain document and he frowned as he took it into his hands. Ren, the Chunin from the barrier core. He drummed his finger on the table, deep in thought. No, he probably wouldn't have the necessary skill for something like this, Danzo muttered with a frown. It was suspicious. After their meeting and Ren's subsequent rejection of his offer, Danzo sent one of his best assassination teams to deal with the problem. It was just a lucky coincidence that this team had a mission in the Land of Waves with the goal of killing the commander of the Kiri outpost over there. Ren was nothing but an unimportant side objective. something they should have dealt with in 10 minutes before moving on to their main mission. The Chunin was just unlucky that he got the mission in the general direction Danzo's best assassins headed. He was simply at the wrong time at the wrong place. Disposing of him wasn't supposed to be a problem. And yet, it was. Danzo lost his best assassination team and Ren survived. The main mission his subordinates embarked on was not fulfilled, allowing the Kiri ninjas to gain even more ground in the Land of Waves. All in all, it was a total disaster. A textbook failure. The official report stated something about his subordinates being luckily caught in a massive amount of exploding tags, making Danzo's suspicions deepen even more. Things like that sometimes happen. Danzo refrained from touching his supposedly missing eye. He too shouldn't have survived the battle where he lost it. He just got lucky. He could believe that Ren got lucky too. But he still could not shake off the suspicious feeling the whole thing evoked in him, because if somebody had the motive to act against him, it would definitely be the man he had ordered killed. The attack was done through Seals 2 and Ren was in the barrier core. But he was just a Chunin. He was a ninja for barely a year and did not show any special aptitudes so far. He did not invent any groundbreaking seal, just introduced some small innovations to several seals, earning his promotion to Chunin rank. He seemed to be a bit above average, not somebody capable of bombing the base of a secret military organization that he should not know existed. The more Danzo thought about it, the bigger headache he had. Ren would have to be killed. Eventually. If for nothing else, then for managing to survive the last attempt on his life and killing his best assassination team. The whole timing of the attack was very dubious. Danzo's guts were telling him Ren was suspicious, but his mind was having a hard time coming up with a way a 17-year-old average ninja could manage to pull that attack off. Danzo had seen many geniuses over the years, but not many could have done that after being a ninja for 1 year. The perpetrator managed to plant explosive seals on his subordinates without their knowledge, without them noticing anything suspicious. Jonins had no clue they had been made into carriers for explosives. It honestly baffled Danzo. He had no idea how that was even possible. There were many surprising and seemingly impossible things in the world. Kids stronger than Jonins existed. There were many of those. If somebody told Danzo that Ren was strong enough to face off against his 6 Jonins head-on, he would find it hard to believe, but he could accept it. Stranger things happened in the world. But a kid managing to plant lethal seals on several Jonins without them noticing a thing? Was this Ren supposed to be the second coming of the 4th Hokage or something? Not even Minato was this good at sealing arts at that age, and he had help from Uzumaki Kushina during his studies of the arts. No, Danzo didn't believe it possible that Ren could be behind the attack. Hiruzen, or Orochimaru, Jiraiya, or some other S-rank ninja perhaps? They had the necessary skill in the sealing arts and the wealth of experience necessary to discover the base and plant the seals, but would they be so subtle about it? Hiruzen was old, Jiraiya was a buffoon, and Orochimaru would boast at the first opportunity. Danzo pursed his lips. He couldn't determine anything from the information he had at hand. Still, have him followed. He looked at his subordinate who was patiently waiting in the shadows of the corner and pointed at Ren's file. I want to know everything he does. There was still a possibility that Ren was connected with the bombing. Maybe he was a spy for Orochimaru or some other village. Or maybe he wasn't. But Danzo didn't get to where he was by ignoring his gut feelings. It was better to be safe than sorry. Yes, Lord Danzo. The masked ninja replied and vanished into the shadows. With a frown still present on his face, Danzo put the file with Ren's ninja information back onto the table, his eyes intently watching Ren's registration photo as if trying to discover some secret he was missing. Sighing, Danzo moved his gaze to the next file belonging to another suspect. He still had an entire stack of files on his table that he would have to go through and hopefully identify the most likely suspect. He was starting to see why Hiruzen hated paperwork so much. Chapter 33, CH 33, Capital City. Ren strolled through the streets of the capital city, happily humming under his nose as he observed his surroundings. So many different people walked the streets. It was quite fascinating. Looking to his right, Ren could see 2 samurai patrolling the streets and glaring at some yakuza-looking guys who skulked back into back alleys under the samurai's gazes. The whole street was full of common people of all kinds. Street vendors advertising their wares, street urchins looking for a good target for theft, common people from the city flooding the streets, and country bumpkin peasants who were gawking at everything much like Ren but in a much less subtle fashion. It was very lively. Here and there, Ren could even see ninjas. For example, further along the street, standing in a line for a yakitori stand were 4 people chatting with each other. 3 16-year-old teenagers and 1 woman in her early 30s. Ren momentarily stopped and furrowed his eyebrows as he observed the genin team from Konoha. He didn't recognize these people even though they were the same age as him. They were probably from a different class. It made him relieved. His only disguise was civilian clothes, so meeting somebody from Konoha who knew his face would be extremely awkward and unlucky. Such a thing was not likely to happen because Konoha was quite a big city. But the risk still existed. Ren didn't exactly have permission to be here, after all. But what is a little treason before lunchtime? He hoped this mindset would not come to kick him in the ass one day, but telling ninjas apart in a crowd was not that hard, at least if they were on an official assignment. There was the forehead protector, but even then, if a ninja took it off, they rarely changed their footwear. Ren only needed to look at their feet and check if they had blue sandals on. It always tripped Ren up. Why sandals? Wouldn't steel-tipped shoes be better? But once he started practicing with chakra, he understood. they were very convenient. Due to the open parts, it was much easier to use chakra with them. The feet were already the hardest place to focus chakra into. Trying to push it through the boots to stick on a tree or walk on water would just add another layer of difficulty for somebody learning how to do these things. A layer that didn't need to be there this early in their training. Sandals were kind of like a crutch to make it easier on the kids, and because they had to wear it literally for years during their childhood and learning phase, ninjas were usually too used to them and stuck with them for life. Frankly, the sandal makers were probably drowning in money in Konoha. Of course, ninjas were not stupid. If they were on a secret mission or were doing something where disguise and stealth were necessary, they would take the sandals off. Once experienced enough, it didn't really matter if they wore sandals or boots or whatever other kind of shoes. They could use the chakra anyway, so they could disguise themselves properly. Ren had a detection seal in his pocket and it was pinging him quite often. It only did so when detecting genin and up levels of chakra. And this whole city was surprisingly full of people who fell into that category. From time to time, when Ren paid proper attention to observing his surroundings, he could see people hiding in the shadows, or standing on rooftops just for a second before disappearing, or feel a very observant gaze pass him in the crowd, which made his instincts flare. Clearly, the capital city was not as simple as it looked at first glance. Ren was glad he didn't go for some elaborate disguise. That would probably get him the attention of all these eyes in the shadows. He really didn't need that. It was a less-known fact among the young people in Konoha, but the Konoha ninjas were not the only ninja force in the country. They didn't teach this at the academy. In fact, weirdly enough, they didn't teach much about other forces outside of ninja villages at the academy. It was all, Konoha is glorious this, or serving the village is an honor that, or other villages are the creation of the devil. Burn them with the will of fire. They washed them brains well, but then again, they had decades of experience. From what Ren remembered, the only thing about other forces the academy teachers told the kiddies was that they should not antagonize samurai. There were other ninja clans who did not join Konoha after its creation. Clans that were already sworn in service to this or that noble family for life couldn't just tell their lords toodles and leave. They were usually small clans and their only mission in life was to protect and work for their lord, but there were quite a lot of them all over the country. The daimyo also had ninja clans under his command. Several of them. And as the daimyo, he had the necessary resources to help them in their ninja training. His ninjas were no pushovers. Ren wouldn't be surprised if the daimyo had 1 or 2 S-rank ninjas somewhere in his pocket. His ninjas didn't do mercenary work like Konoha ninjas did. They focused on protecting the capital city and the daimyo family. And since the daimyo stayed in the capital most of the time, these ninjas were pretty much irrelevant outside of the city. Maybe that's why the academy instructors did not teach the children about them? Ren frowned at that thought as he reached his goal, a small restaurant where he was having a meeting with a merchant in like 5 minutes ago. Ren jolted as he realized he spent so much time gawking at the city and its people that he was late. With a wry smile, he entered the restaurant and was led to a booth with a ginger-haired man, a true rarity in this world, who gave him a grumpy, almost Irish-looking scowl upon seeing him. Nevertheless, the man stood up and slightly bowed before starting his introduction. I am Ren Ishii, the head of the Ishiren Trading Company. You wanted to present me a lucrative product. He impatiently asked, quoting what Ren wrote in his letter to the man. Ren just smiled, slightly apologetically at being late. Yes, my name is Ren. His lips almost twitched into a smile, but that would only infuriate the man more, so he refrained. The man's name was one of the reasons he chose his trading company for this. It was a good cover for him. If he struck it rich with the products he was going to introduce, the company could just say that Ren made it and most people would conveniently misunderstand which Ren. After all, being an orphan without a last name had its advantages, especially since there were thousands of Rens in this world. Ren had to make use of it at least in some fashion. No? Go on, then. Wow me. The merchant Ren snorted and crossed his hands across his chest. Despite his acting, Ren could clearly see that the man was properly evaluating him with his eyes. And considering that Ren went for an inconspicuous civilian look, the merchant was probably not very impressed. My business with you has to do with. Ren sat down and used a dramatic pause in his speech as he put a scroll with drawings on the table. Board games. Well, he had to start somewhere. If Jiraiya could get money by writing porn, Ren could exploit the kids and leverage his knowledge of board games from his previous life to earn himself a fortune. This world was seriously lacking in fun things to do for kids. Sure, that Hikaru kid from the movies had even a gaming console, but that was only something the richest could afford at this time. It was not widespread by any means. There were some card games and board games, but they mostly had to do with gambling, not something parents wanted their kids to learn. Usually, kids learn crafts, work in fields, or focus on their studies in this world. It depended on what social class and place one was born in. Cheap games that even normal people could afford were definitely something that could sell well in Ren's opinion. Sure, he would love to bring something more important into this world, like new alcoholic beverages, or a steam engine, or, okay, his mind was drawing blanks. The problem was that he had no idea how to make beverages or how to construct the steam engine. But board games and card games? He remembered some of them, some that this world did not have. He decided he could start with these. Ren was already keeping most of his money in a storage scroll, but it would be nice to have a proper legal account with legal money that could be traced back and wasn't tied to Konoha. This was just one of his contingencies in case he needed to leg it out of Konoha. The merchant, Ren Ishii, threw Ren a skeptical look, but since he was already here, he sighed and decided to take a look at the drawings. Ren could just tell. This was the beginning of a beautiful mutually beneficial relationship. And if it didn't work? Well, he could always go the Jiraiya route and write some smut. After all, how hard could that be? Chapter 34, ch 34, Clone Khan. While Ren was negotiating the cooperation between him and the Ishiren Trading Company in the capital, his clone, who liked to refer to himself as Clone Khan, spent his time doing the usual activities Ren partook in his daily life. It had already been a week since Ren left for the capital, and Clone Khan had to say, he envied the bastard for avoiding all this trouble he had to go through in Konoha. Ever since the earthquake, Konoha has been on its head. The village was in a state of emergency, a strict curfew was imposed, and worst of all, Clone Khan knew he was being followed. It was a stressful few days for him. Just yesterday, a ninja tried to break into his apartment. They failed because Ren had a lot of security seals installed. The ninja tripped up an alarm seal and got caught in a security seal that glued his sandals to the floor. Clone Khan almost confronted him out of habit. He heard the alarm seal and his first instinct was to check it out. He only barely managed to stop himself before reaching the trapped ninja who was just around the corner. Then again, he did just wake up due to the seal, so he was still a bit groggy from the sleep. Besides, who wakes up a clone by trying to break into the original's property? Clone Khan was certain that it was against the clone rights or something. He deserved a proper 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep, damn it. Fortunately, he didn't confront the ninja. He pretended that something else got his attention and waited around said corner until he didn't hear the guy trying to struggle out of the trap anymore. The problem was that while Danzo's men were definitely following him, they didn't seem to be aggressive just yet. They seemed to look for information more than anything, and that told him they had no idea he was behind the explosive surprise that turned Konoha upside down last week. That was great. He could deal with a bit of suspicion. He just had to act like usual. But if he saw the ninja who tried to break into his house, the man would either try to kill him or try to kill himself on the spot. The first option would be very troublesome because Clone Khan was just a clone, and even if he had won the fight, it would make Danzo more suspicious of Ren. The second opinion was also troublesome because people were liable to notice a fight between ninjas in the middle of the village's housing district, so he would have to report it and explain what happened. People would start asking questions like, why does he have such strong security in his home? Does he not trust Konoha? Or worse, why would somebody want to break into his house? Yeah, the Clone Khan decided to just not do that. The best trouble is one you can easily evade, after all. Just like now. He was sitting under a tree like he did during most of Ino and Hinata's training sessions. In his hands, he held a book reminiscent of his fuinjutsu notebook, but it wasn't his fuinjutsu notebook. The reason? Because the detection seal he had on his person was telling him that his observer was getting unusually boldly clingy today. They risked getting far too close. In fact, they were crouching in the branches of the tree above his head. At first, Clone Khan was tense, thinking this was it. That they would try to kill him, and then Ren would be unhappy because he would need to leave Konoha, and then he would need to deal with hunter ninjas, which would be just awful, and he would need to look for a way to steer the future without being in Konoha. And the Clone Khan forcefully stopped his train of depressing thoughts. He was probably created with a small flaw. Such a depressing mental monologue was not Ren's usual thing, but it happened to him quite often. It was annoying. Nevertheless, Clone Khan realized after an hour that the goal of the attempted break-in into his house and the risk of getting too close during this Pikebo operation was to see what was in his fuinjutsu notebook. The chakra of his hidden observer slightly moved only when he pulled a similar little book out. It wasn't hard to guess his goal once Clone Khan noticed that fact. Of course, Ren's fuinjutsu designs were the most important thing to him. He wouldn't be pulling his notebook when he was aware that a ninja was practically watching over his shoulder. It honestly amazed Clone Khan that his observer thought he wasn't noticed, but he guessed Ren's reputation as a fresh Chunin was helping him out here. Instead, he brought out an empty notebook and started drawing, and he was miserable when it came to drawing. Stick figures were the height of his skill in that department. But since Danzo was so interested in what Ren did with his book all the time, Clone Khan was eager to entertain his observer, drawing a manga with stick figures and appropriately throwing cringy lines here and there. He had to admit, doing the sex scene with stick figures was hard, but Clone Khan just wanted to see if his observer would react. Alas, the man was probably emotionally dead inside. He didn't even twitch. Not even when Ren made the male stick figure miss an arm and an eye in a similar fashion to Danzo and had the female figure wear a big red hat. A bit risky? Maybe. But he was one frustrated clone. Because of Ren's constant observer, Hinata and Ino's training had to take one for the team. Clone Khan wanted to start Hinata on the elemental training and have Ino learn some earth techniques to see how fast she could learn ninjutsu and determine if she had a talent in that area. But of course, Ren was just a tutor who was supposed to help the girls with their academy stuff. Elemental training and techniques were Chunin level things. It's not something that academy students should learn. Ren didn't care about unwritten rules like these. These girls will find themselves in a war before they reach 20. But if Danzo knew that Ren was teaching them advanced things, he could try making some trouble for him. It wouldn't be much, but the man would probably try it just to be petty or to see Ren's reaction. So, unfortunately, Hinata was relegated to something much less interesting than learning how to shoot lightning from the tips of her fingers. But it was also something she still needed to learn anyway. She was learning how to throw senbon for now. Ino was doing an increased amount of physical exercises to lessen the gap between Hinata's and her level when it came to her fitness now that she had her gravity seals. Other than that, Ren had her practice water walking or do the katas with her sword. Both things were very beneficial and maybe even necessary for her future career as a kunoichi, but also equally boring to watch. Seeing her fall into the pond stopped being funny when it happened for the 41st time. Her father pulled through for her and got her gecko Hayate to show her the kenjutsu basics. Hayate was not going to be Ino's teacher though, and Clone-kun was not surprised. Hayate was the best kenjutsu user in Konoha. It was astonishing that Inoichi could get him to teach Ino anything at all. The man was horribly busy. Then again, the older Yamanaka probably had his methods. Blackmail and bribery were not out of the question considering Ren's experience with the overprotected man. Hayate was just going to check Ino's progress with the sword every 2 weeks and give her some tips. Neither senbon throwing nor kenjutsu were skills that could be learned overnight. The Akugan would help Hinata a bit, but she still needed to grind the hours of the learning process to get the skill into her hands. In the anime, everybody could throw a kunao, but people generally disregarded the fact that throwing a kunao was not easy. The kids trained for years in the academy before they got that skill down. Senbon was very different from kunao, however. Clone-kun reckoned Hinata would need at least a few months to gain the needed proficiency with senbon. Ino wasn't particularly talented at kenjutsu, but she was stubborn, and one of Ren's ideas when it came to Yamana clan practices actually worked. Ino could enter her mind and learn stuff there at an accelerated pace. The blonde girl was so giddy about it, and she looked downright adorable when she glared at Ren with her hands on her hips and had him swear to not tell that to her father or any other Yamanaka. She wanted it for only herself. She could be selfish like that sometimes. Honestly, how that worked, Ren had no idea. He thought she would use it to learn book stuff. But apparently, Ino didn't get the memo because she told him she was practicing the hair techniques and her kenjutsu in her mental space. And much to Clone-kun's shock, it did work for her. She was learning the kenjutsu basics at lightning speed, and her slashes were getting more and more precise every day. How she could replicate chakra in her mind, or how did she know when she did a technique correctly, neither Clone-kun nor Ren had any idea. But he wasn't going to mention that to the girl. She most likely had no idea either. She probably just didn't think about it. She was doing something outrageous, but it worked out for her. And it would give her the advantage in a similar fashion as the Bakugan gave Hinata. Ren didn't know enough about Yin Chakra to put together how Ino's new mental skill worked. But then again, Chakra could even resurrect the dead and allow people to travel through space and time. He still had a lot to learn. Ino was probably just too thick to realize this was not supposed to be possible, and that's why she managed to do it. Sigh, the blondes in this world. The situation kind of worked itself out despite the consequences of Ren's actions. The girls would need the time to master their new skills, and Danzo's minions wouldn't learn anything sensitive by watching them practice senbon throwing and kenjutsu. But god, if it wasn't boring to watch the girls throw senbon or slash a sword at the air. Clone-kun couldn't wait for Ren to return from the capital so he could peacefully disperse into the air. Living was too depressing. Chapter 35, ch 35. You are weird. Ren came back from the capital 2 weeks after the earthquake and things were finally winding down in the village. He got a stink eye from his clone who had to suffer through the crisis, but his suffering was for the greater good, so it didn't count. Usually, he wouldn't be able to keep a clone summoned for 2 weeks straight. However, his existence was not only for Ren to evade the possibility of Danzo deciding to deal with him in a more permanent fashion. The more important reason was to test Ren's new seals. The durability seal was something Ren worked on even before he got his hands on shadow clones. And when he finally managed to create something that worked, it turned out the seal also had an unexpected effect. It kept the chakra contained within the shell of the clone, lengthening its lifespan by a lot. Ren wanted to see if the clone would last for a few days, but he was surprised that 2 weeks later, the clone was still going strong. Normally, chakra leaks in a small amount from shadow clones at all times. They would run out of chakra in less than a day even if they don't use any technique. Anime didn't show this aspect very well, and Ren understood why. Naruto was a cheater. Ren's bet was that his chakra was so powerful that this was not much of an issue for him. His clones could go for days. Normal ninjas, even jonin, were not so lucky. Sometimes Ren just wanted to gently put his hands around that little overpowered brat's neck and, ahem, he was joking, of course. He meant to say he felt very slightly envious. Yes, that was it. Because of his clone's new longevity, Ren had to make another seal. He approached the clone and chuckled, "You don't seem like you enjoyed your time here. Anything important to tell me? You know, since I won't get your memories and stuff," he said as he fished out a paper tag with the other experimental seal. Sure, the clone shrugged and gave Ren a deadpan look. Get fucked. Ren almost choked on his spit when he heard that. Then again, that also meant there was nothing important to report, so all was well. Leaving me here with Danzo's flunky following me like an overeager stalker was so not cool, the clone muttered, and Ren threw him a wry look. He knew it was not fun. That's why he delayed his homecoming as much as possible. Duh. The clone did seem a bit frustrated, and Ren wondered if it had to do with keeping him in existence for an extended period of time. Clones were not meant to exist for days on end, and there was no documentation of the effects of it happening. This was practically uncharted waters for Ren. Every little detail could be important. "That's the new seal?" the clone asked, pulling Ren out of his thoughts. Yup. Ren nodded and handed the paper tag to the clone. At the end of the day, the clone was still him, so he too was a seal master and probably understood bits and pieces of the seal since it was done in Ren's usual sealing style. "It's nice work. The clone praised with a nod, smiling a bit for the first time since Ren met him today, and his eyes gained an interested gleam. What did you name it? If Ren needed any confirmation that this was his clone, the look in his eyes when seals were mentioned was enough of a proof. Yin Containment Seal, Ren proudly replied. He tried to keep the name simple while also making it describe what the seal was supposed to do. Ha, the clone apparently disagreed, judging by that sound. Are you mad? It sounds like something out of a cheap cultivator story. Oh, who am I kidding? Of course, you are mad. He huffed and put the tag with the seal on the table before he crossed his arms on his chest, giving Ren a stern look. Ren couldn't help but think that having himself stare at him in this way was seriously weird. If you are going to do it, then do it properly. At least call it 9 evil sealing yin containing dragon lock turtle tiger phoenix. Insert a mythical animal of your preference. Super profound seal. The clone had to take a deep breath at the end of that sentence. Ren olishly blinked at himself, and for a moment he wondered what was wrong with him, because deep down, his thoughts subconsciously agreed with the clone before he managed to shake them off. No, 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 no way. Yin Containment Seal was a great name. Ignoring that little inner turmoil, Ren politely smiled at his clone, but in the corners of his mouth his smile was visibly a bit strained. You are weird. The clone instantly noticed it and chuckled. I am you. He shrugged and Ren rolled his eyes at him. Hey you, nice to meet you. I am embarrassed. He retorted with a grin. Dad jokes? Really? The clone raised an unamused eyebrow at Ren, making his grin disappear. Am I usually that uncool? No wonder Naruto calls us uncle. I am embarrassed too. And Ren slightly flushed. Why was he inflicting self-burn on himself again? Okay. He had to admit that joke was awkward, but it just came out of his mouth before he could think about it. That little vacation did you a world of good. I am glad, the clone said in a relieved voice, all remaining tension leaving from his shoulders. It sure did. Ren agreed, his embarrassment melting away. Hell, he couldn't remember the last time he was this carefree. He will have to take vacations outside Konoha more often. Staying in this village was clearly not doing him any good. It wasn't just the village either. This entire world was just way too stressful. Humming to himself, the clone saw that he was no longer needed here, so he once again took the sealing tag. Let's get this over with, he said, and before Ren could react, the clone slapped the tag on his forehead, making Ren instantly freeze. For a moment, Ren braced himself for an impact. 2 weeks of memories should definitely knock him out, especially if he wasn't prepared for them. But fortunately, the Yin Containment Seal worked as intended and Ren relaxed when he received no memories from his clone. The purpose of the seal was to catch and contain the Yin chakra leaving the clone, which usually returned to the caster, bringing with it the clone's memories. Naturally, Ren didn't have the time to test it. The abrupt actions of his clone made Ren wonder if he wasn't growing a tad bit too reckless. But that couldn't be it, could it? Oh, well, it was probably Ino's fault. Hinata was too meek to corrupt him, and having a natural mindfucker as a student was a very convenient excuse. Ren nodded to himself, deciding he should give Ino 10 additional laps around the pond tomorrow. Teacher's privileges. Maybe he could test if his new seal could counter the Yamanaka techniques? Ren shook that thought off almost as soon as it appeared in his head. It was a good idea, but testing it was just too dangerous. He didn't want Ino's spirit to be trapped within a seal. Explaining to Inoichi why there is nobody at home in his daughter's body would be a drag. Besides, as much as he complained about Ino, he liked the blonde Yamanaka. At least, when she wasn't talking about Suzuki Uchiha. So, about 30% of the time. God, how was he supposed to cure Ino of the illness known as childhood crush? He already tried having Hinata punch her in the face again, but that only motivated her. The more he thought about it, the more the reasons for his delayed return became apparent in his head, and he had to resist the strong urge to create another clone before going to the capital again. Maybe he should make that 10 additional laps into 20? Just in case. More running meant less downtime, and less downtime meant Ino talking less about the Uchiha boy. Prevention was very important, after all. Did this chapter get your heart racing? Show it with a like on Infinite Novel. Chapter 36, ch 36, Unexpected Ambush. Since he was back in Konoha, Ren decided to go and have lunch at the Ichiraku ramen stand. In the capital, he splurged a bit and ate at high-end restaurants as a proper tourist ninja in disguise should. But he missed something simpler, something with a homey feeling to it. As he walked through the village at a leisure pace, using side streets to avoid most of the traffic in the village, suddenly Ren's instinct screamed at him as he noticed with the corner of his eye something flying at him. His training showed as his instincts reacted before his mind could even realize something was going on. The gravity seals on his body were instantly released as he whipped out a kunao and vanished from the spot, evading the projectile. As he was vanishing, a shadow clone silently appeared out of nowhere behind his attacker too. Fortunately, his shadow clone had enough presence of mind to not just ram a kunao straight to the guy's face, and instead, he restrained him with a touch, applying a mean gravity seal to his clothes. The guy abruptly experienced a change in flight direction as his jump was interrupted, and he fell from midair to the ground like a sack of potatoes just as Ren reappeared a bit further away, his kunao in guard position. He was prepared for a fight. But then his mind finally caught up and he just olishly blinked at the thing on the ground, speechlessly furrowing his eyebrows. Are you? He looked back at the spot from where he had vanished and noticed wet ground with pieces of a rubber ball around the exploding seal he had applied there on the ground as he was vanishing. His sweat dropped. Trying to prank me? He asked in utter bafflement while gazing at Naruto, who was staring incomprehensibly at the sky with an open mouth. This was probably the first time the kid got a real taste of the difference between him and a ninja. Sure, he was evading the Umbu after his pranks, but let's be honest. No Umbu would seriously give a chase to Naruto. If Iruka could catch Naruto, then a large majority of Chinins in the village could too. The kid wasn't that fast. He was not even remotely close to the level necessary to outrun Umbu. They probably enjoyed his antics, and pranking was a great training method for a kid ninja wannabe. Going by the common sense of ninjas in this world, there was no reason to stop him. Ren could see a bored Umbu giving Naruto a play chase and subtly teaching him a few things about evading a pursuit through hands-on experience. After all, the kid's great stealth skills didn't come out of nowhere. Did they never teach you at the academy not to jump at a ninja? Are you stupid or what? Ren questioned in a baffled tone as his clone exasperatedly shrugged and touched the exploding seal with his foot, erasing it before dispelling itself. Ren wasn't angry at Naruto, but he was surprised he got this close to him without being noticed. The boy had some serious stealth potential. It was such a pity. Still, jumping a ninja like that was a really stupid thing to do. If Ren's exploding seal was more sensitive and the rubber ball set it off, Ren suppressed a shiver at almost accidentally exploding the protagonist due to a prank. You suck, uncle. Naruto scowled and threw a glare at Ren, but he couldn't move his body due to the gravity seal on his clothes. At best, he could slightly wiggle on the spot. Ren burst into laughter when he heard and saw him. It only made Naruto scowl more. Taking a deep breath to calm his laughter after a few seconds, Ren realized what this was probably about, and his mood soured. He crouched next to Naruto and gently tapped his chest, erasing the gravity seal while speaking. I am really sorry about telling you to ask Hinata for help. Fortunately, Naruto didn't just jump to his feet and try to get even with Ren. Instead, he seemed to properly listen to what he had to say. That was a win, in Ren's book. But don't be too hard on her. Her family is really strict and they don't like you. They forbade her to interact with you. Ren grimaced a bit. He truly screwed the pooch by interfering there. The least he could do was to explain the situation to Naruto and hope for the best. But, why? Naruto's face fell when he heard that an entire clan disliked him. I haven't done anything. Ren couldn't help but snort, interrupting him. The funny thing was that their dislike of Naruto had nothing to do with Kurama. He raised his eyebrow at Naruto in a patronizing way, because the kid totally deserved it. Really now? Remember a year ago? You broke into their compound and stole their underwear. His look intensified and Naruto shrunk back into himself as he realized this was totally his fault. But that wasn't enough, was it? Ren hummed. You then placed it all around Konoha in an imitation of flags, on a particularly windy day. He finished with an amused smile, but from his tone, it was obvious he wasn't praising Naruto. The kid gulped, his face set in a look kids usually wear when they are caught with a hand in the cookie jar. Sure, managing to do so with the Hyuga guards patrolling their compound was amazing. Ren admitted with a shrug. He had to give praise where it was due. Naruto's downward look instantly evaporated and he preened a little at the acknowledgement of his skill. I have no idea how you dodged their Byakugan. Ren continued, giving the kid an expectant look. But Naruto's expression morphed into a perfect image of confusion. Baku what? He asked as if he had heard that word for the very first time. Of course, it was just a dumb luck. Silly me for thinking otherwise. Ren rolled his eyes and fondly ruffled Naruto's hair. Oi! Naruto shouted in an offended tone, but he didn't try to lean away. Realizing that the kid was clearly touch-starved, Ren awkwardly pulled his hand back. It kinda made sense why he was so desperate for friends and attention. Deciding to not go into the train of depressing thoughts, Ren focused on the current topic. The important thing is that you humiliated them. If you did that to the Inuzuka clan, they would be angry enough to send their dogs after you. Naruto winced at the image, but a week later, they would laugh with you and congratulate you for managing to prank them. So, should I target Kiba's clan next? A wicked smile started appearing on Naruto's face as he focused only on the positives of that situation, but Ren rained on his parade. Do you want to try your hand at outrunning their ninja dogs? He asked while helping Naruto stand up. Fair point. Naruto mumbled under his nose with a small wince, imagining having to run from a pack of angry dogs. The problem is that the Hyuga clan takes their reputation very seriously, Naruto. Ren huffed and poked the kid's forehead to make him focus, and you, he snickered, showed everybody their dirty laundry. Naruto grinned at the mental image despite the seriousness of the situation, but Ren just continued, they didn't like you before. They absolutely hate you now. And that's not going to change anytime soon. Yes, Kyuubi was a part of it. But Hyugas were a ninja clan. They knew what Jinchuriki was and how important Naruto would be for the village when he grew up. The whole situation with them forbidding Hinata to interact with Naruto was weird to Ren. If she managed to do it, then that would be beneficial for the clan in the future. But then Ren investigated a bit and heard about the underwear incident. And everything made sense in the world again. Then why tell me to ask Haibaba for help? Naruto asked, tilting his head. Admittedly, Ren made a face. I misjudged the situation. His shoulders slumped. He wasn't a person who had a hard time admitting his failures to himself, but he still didn't like admitting them so openly. It was embarrassing. But Ren's complicated feelings were wasted on Naruto. Are you using complicated words on purpose? The kid asked with a scrunched expression, clearly not getting what Ren meant, making Ren groan. I screwed up. Got that? He disgruntledly bit out a simplified form of what he tried to tell the boy. Oh. Okay? Why not just say that then? Naruto asked in a deep voice, and Ren's right eye twitched. Whatever. Come on, I will buy you 2 bowls of ramen as an apology, he grumpily said. He was going for ramen anyway, so there was no harm in it. 3 bowls and I will forgive you. Naruto tried to milk it for all it was worth, but Ren was more experienced in this kind of negotiation. 1.5. He smirked at the kid and dared him to challenge it with his eyes. He had to show Naruto he wasn't a pushover like Irika, because he knew how much ramen the kid could eat. Ren had to set proper boundaries if he didn't want his wallet to suffer. He was sorry for screwing up, but he wasn't that sorry. T2 sounds great, Naruto stuttered, flushing as he silently admitted his defeat. His face also became a bit unhappy about getting only 2 free bowls, but free food was free food. They quickly reached the ramen stand and took their seats after ordering when Ren suddenly remembered something important and face-palmed, getting Naruto's attention. Here, he unsealed a small notebook from his forearm. I and Hina dash, ahem, hi Baba, because of course he was going to stick with that, made it for you, like, a month ago, which was why Ren almost forgot. A lot happened during the past few weeks. She felt really bad about rejecting your request for help. And since this is the first time I've seen you since it happened, I can finally give it to you. Ren had to admit he was a bit worried, but giving Naruto some tips on the academy curriculum, tree walking, and water walking was certainly not going to make Akatsuki feel threatened enough to go with the kid in full force. He decided that giving the blonde brat number 2, because Ino was definitely the blonde brat number 1 in Ren's mind, a bit of help was not going to cause many issues in the future. It shouldn't mess things up even more than they already were. Or so Ren hoped. He really hoped so. This was so going to screw something up, wasn't it? Thank you, Naruto exclaimed and started browsing the book with a surprisingly focused look. Ren was a bit afraid that Naruto wouldn't want some book, but the boy looked happy about receiving something like that. Unfortunately, Ren wasn't going to train the boy, so the rest was up to him to learn from the books. The tips he and Hinata put together were admittedly quite good and focused on practical application more than theory, because Ren knew Naruto was too stupid to learn in any other way than by doing. Sadly, Ren literally couldn't train Naruto even if he wanted to. If Hokage wanted Naruto properly trained, the boy would have the best trainers in Konoha. There was a reason why that didn't happen. Maybe it was a favor to Jiraiya or Kakashi who wanted to train the boy themselves, or some other utter bullshit like that. Or maybe there was something more malicious afoot. Ren didn't know, and he wasn't particularly interested in trying to poke into that secret, but he had a hard time believing that Naruto's issues with the clone technique were not noticed by the Hokage, just as he didn't believe even for a second that Naruto managed to sneak into the Hokage tower, steal a top-secret scroll, evade all the Umbu guards, and then knock out the literal ninja god with honeypot tactics that were probably tried on the said man so many times it got old to him before he even passed his mid-20s. The kid was good, but he wasn't that good. The food finally arrived and Ren fondly watched as Naruto carefully put the book away before digging in. Ren was about to start with his own ramen when his eyebrows scrunched and a realization hit him. Wait a minute. He looked at Naruto with a deadpan stare. Aren't you supposed to be in a school? The boy choked on his noodles. Chapter 37, ch 37, Academy Day. The lunch break in the academy was in full swing, and as usual, Hinata sat alone at the back of the classroom. Before she met Ren, she was always sad to be alone and could only enviously look upon all the cliques in the room as they had fun with each other while eating their lunch. Nowadays, though, yo, bitch. Ino casually invited herself to the seat next to Hinata and bumped her shoulder to Hinata's. She instantly noticed that Hinata's Byakugan was on, so she teasingly added, "Not stalking the troublemaker today, I hope?" Hinata gave her a very unamused look. "What about you, bimbo? Not talking about Uchiha today? Are you feeling alright?" She quietly retorted back. "I don't talk about him that much." Ino sniffed and tried to steal a bite from Hinata's lunch with her chopsticks, only for Hinata to parry them with her own and give her a warning glance. "I think our teacher would disagree," she said. Ino huffed as her next attempt to reach Hinata's bento box was rebuffed again. "You know that I only do that because I know it annoys the hell out of him. It's a payback for all the stupid things he is putting me through during training," she said with a tongue slightly poking out of her mouth due to her utmost concentration on her thieving attempts. But Hinata had Byakugan and was still faster than Ino, so the blonde was out of luck. Hinata valiantly managed to defend her lunchbox. "And you know that I don't do any stalking anymore," Hinata grumbled, causing Ino to exclaim an offended protest as she managed to slip her chopsticks through Ino's guard and take one onigiri from her bento box. "Tisk, bitch." Ino clicked her tongue and ceased her attempts at stealing Hinata's food. Instead, she leaned a bit away from her so her own lunchbox would be safe. Hinata gave Ino a very small smirk, but it was gone almost as soon as it appeared. She was satisfied with her retaliation. She was no longer that weak girl who had no idea how to improve. Hinata didn't even know why it bothered her so much, but it did, and Ino knew it. That's why she brought up her past stalking activities, because it reminded Hinata of the times when she was weak, meek, and powerless. When her only source of confidence was watching the orange goof causing trouble and unashamedly shouting his aspirations for everybody to hear with enviable confidence. She still thought it was admirable. But now she also had a goal and will to better herself without having to rely on confidence boost from stalking Naruto. It made her proud. She felt as if she had grown up a bit. "Your target is incoming." Hinata closed her eyes and dismissed her Byakugan when she noticed a certain boy approaching them. She looked at him as he came near, and had to resist the urge to raise her eyebrow at him. This was unexpected. Sasuke did not interact with others, ever. For any reason. Hinata wondered what he wanted. Sasuke came to a stop in front of Ino and Hinata's desk, staring at them with a composed and cool expression, but Hinata could see his minuscule body tells. He was awkward and probably didn't know what to say. She could have helped him by starting the conversation, but it was surprisingly fun, seeing him struggle with social interaction. It was usually her in that position. She was truly turning into a horrible person under her teacher's tutelage, wasn't she? What is that? Sasuke spotted Hinata's lunchbox and blinked, his entire expression now having a small trace of interest. Hinata inwardly hummed. That was as good a topic to break the ice as any, she guessed. Sasuke-kun? Ino finally snapped from her deep shock but still stared at him with wide eyes as if she had just seen something impossible happening. Spaghetti with tomato sauce, Hinata evenly replied. She didn't like how his expression shifted. She remembered that this guy was a freak who had eaten tomatoes for lunch every day for the past few years. Her stocky dash, observation activities gave her a great overview of knowledge about her classmates. Can I dash? Sasuke confidently looked Hinata in the eyes as he started to speak. Of course. Ino instantly butted in, almost eagerly. No, but Hinata deadpanned. Not just no, but hell no. Ren didn't cook often for her. She noticed he didn't like cooking all that much. Usually, he just let her use his kitchen to make herself a lunchbox for the next day. The Hyuga clan imposed a strict diet on her, but her food intake was not enough for her body now that she had the gravity seals forcing it to grow stronger. If she deviated from the diet, her father would get mad. It was the diet made by their ancestors throughout the generations to ensure the best growth of Hyuga shinobi, or some bullshit like that. She inwardly giggled. She started to even sound like her teacher. She also couldn't tell her father why she needed more food. Revealing that Ren put a seal, even a beneficial one, on her would probably make her father lock her in a room before forbidding her to meet her teacher ever again. Fortunately, Ren offered her an easy solution, but it was still rare to get food made by him and Hinata cherished it. She was so not sharing, not even with Ino, and she actually liked the blonde bimbo. Not that she would tell that to her face anytime soon. Oi! Ino reproachfully rebuked Hinata's rude reply and gently poked her in the ribs. One bite won't dash. Just then, Irika's voice interrupted Ino's speech. Kids, gather up. The spars will start shortly. Hinata felt relieved. She wasn't in a mood to argue with Ino about this. She closed her lunchbox and almost let out a chuckle when Sasuke's face slightly fell, his eyes following the box as she put it back into her bag. If you want to try them that much, just go to a restaurant. They have them almost anywhere nowadays. Hinata told the Uchiha to prevent any idea about stealing it. That seemed to slightly cheer the boy up. How he didn't know the dish, she had no idea. It was sold everywhere. Then again, she heard he was highly antisocial, a bit like her in that regard. And he supposedly only went to the grocery store, academy, and spent the rest of his time in his clan compound, probably training. Plus, the restaurants will make them much better than, never mind. Yes, Ren was no master chef. Even she could make better spaghetti, but she wasn't going to admit that out loud, especially not in front of Ino. The blonde would definitely blab, and Hinata actually wanted to eat Ren's food again in the future, even if it wasn't up to par with a dish from a restaurant. The kids quickly gathered around the arena in the training yard and the spars started. Hinata stood next to Ino, a bit to the side of the main group of gathered kids as they watched the matches. So far, mostly just civilian-borns fought. Their performance was laughable and Hinata idly wondered how many of them would live past their 20th birthday. Catching herself thinking that, her mood soured. Thankfully, Ino was silent. Throwing her a glance, Hinata noticed an uncomfortable look on the blonde's face as she watched the pathetic catfight in the match between two civilian-born kunoichi in training. Hinata understood. Just a few weeks ago, Ino was not much better than them. Watching how unskilled they were was probably a bit conflicting for Ino, who was in their place and thought herself good enough. Now she knew differently. Hinata went through similar conflicting feelings. It probably didn't help Ino that one of the kunoichi was Sakura and she got knocked on her ass with a straight slap to her left cheek. Hinata wanted to facepalm and sigh at the sky. It was not even a punch, just a slap. And this girl wanted to be a kunoichi? Worse yet, Ren actually offhandedly told her that the pinkette had great potential when they discussed her classmates. Hinata just didn't see it. Heh. At least she no longer disliked the pinkette because Naruto had eyes only for her. Now she dislikes her because she would probably not have as much talent as Sakura in the medical field, but she should still do well enough, as Ren once muttered when he thought she wasn't watching. Hinata almost regretted reading his lips, but it was almost an instinctual skill for a Hyuga. It made her double down on her efforts at learning from the medical texts he procured for her. She was so not going to be beaten by Sakura out of all people. Sasuke came to the stage and their instructor was about to ask who wanted to challenge him. As the top student, others could freely challenge him, but only Naruto and Kiba bothered to do it regularly. Well, mostly Naruto. His enthusiasm was always so endearing, but his fighting skills made Hinata always inwardly wince nowadays. She even tried to talk to Irika about it, but the man just helplessly shrugged, saying he tried his best. But Naruto, well, it is what it is. The one useful thing her clan actually imparted to her was that it didn't matter how much one trained if that training was not done in an effective manner. At least, Naruto did start to improve since Ren gave him the notebook with helpful tips they made together. She didn't include the "learn this if you want to beat Uchiha Sasuke" clause in the notebook for nothing. After her detailed observations, she knew what made the orange blonde tick. Irika might not know how to motivate Naruto to learn something as mind-numbingly boring as proper taijutsu katas, but Hinata had a much better grasp on Naruto's personality and how to make him do what she wanted. Hinata's thoughts were interrupted when Sasuke, who was on the stage, suddenly loudly exclaimed, but still in a composed tone, "I want to fight the Hyuga." He looked at Irika, who gave Hinata "what can you do" look before beckoning her to come into the ring with a small apologetic smile. "Hey, bastard! What has she done to you?" Naruto, of course, instantly angrily shouted at Sasuke, flailing his fist around. "Why don't you fight me instead?" Sasuke just snorted, and his eyes did not move away from Hinata no matter how loud Naruto got. "Oh, look at that. How cute. Your crush is defending you," Ino very quietly whispered to Hinata. "Oof." Ino suddenly leaned forward as Hinata gave her a chakra poke right under her ribs, hitting only muscle and no organs. At best it would bruise slightly, but it would also hurt for the remainder of the day. All the medical knowledge was not for naught, and Byakugan just made using it that much more convenient. "That's not nice, Ino-chan," Hinata shyly said. After all, people were looking at them. The fact that using a gentle fist on Ino like that was out of character for her momentarily went over her head. "I liked you better when you were shy," Ino wheezily said, easily powering through the pain. "It wasn't that bad. They had worse during their training." Hinata snorted and started moving into the ring. When she was standing opposite the Uchiha, he seriously spoke as they made the seal of confrontation, "Fight me properly." Without holding back, she resisted the urge to take off her jacket. Taking it off constituted getting serious nowadays. Her mind just made that link along the lines of her training. It was just a pity she didn't want her clan to know how good she had become under Ren's training. Her jacket stayed on. She felt a bit bad due to Sasuke's request, though. I don't like fighting, Sasuke-kun," Hinata said in an apologetic tone, sounding meek. She even ducked her head a bit, mostly out of habit. Hearing her, Sasuke cringed. "Don't do that," he bit out, "put off. It's creepy." Hinata was about to ask him what he meant, but Irika intervened and started the match with a loud, "Begin." Sasuke sprang forth and jumped into the air, attempting to kick Hinata in the chest with a spinning high kick for an opener, and Hinata barely dodged by rolling under Sasuke while activating her Byakugan. She was much slower than the Uchiha with the gravity seals on her. She needed the superior visual prowess to put up at least some fight. Their positions were now reversed as Sasuke landed on the ground and Hinata stood up, but Sasuke was already performing his next attack, trying to deliver a punch to Hinata's head. She saw it coming, however. She blocked the punch with a small wince, and her right fist was already midway to Sasuke's abdomen when he grabbed her wrist, stopping it in place. Hinata did not hesitate as the Uchiha expected. She just changed her block into a hold as her left hand clamped around Sasuke's wrist and she jumped up, her knee already on its way toward his chin. Sasuke's eyes widened and his superior speed came to his rescue as he released Hinata's wrist and forcefully turned his body to the right, dodging her knee as it almost grazed his chin. Sweat rolling down his temple, Sasuke smirked in anticipation. He had her. She was in midair and unable to defend against his counterattack. And indeed, his foot crashed into Hinata's side, sending her through the air before she landed, sliding her feet on the ground, holding her side. Sasuke's eyes glinted in excitement. She could keep up with him, and he didn't even remember when last he had fun fighting a classmate. He was about to continue the spar when Irika suddenly yelled, "Winner, Sasuke Uchiha." Looking like a deer in headlights, Sasuke stopped in his tracks, his head whipping toward Irika, who only gestured at Hinata's feet. She was out of the ring. Sasuke's eye twitched as he gave Hinata a small angry glare. She was exactly an inch outside of the ring. He didn't believe even for a second that it was coincidental. She clearly could have stopped her body while still within the ring. Hinata didn't look him in the eyes and just did the seal of reconciliation after the spar before returning to Ino's side as Sasuke intently watched her, much to the wailing despair of many fangirls in the audience. The class continued, but no other notable fight happened. Naruto was paired with a civilian-born boy and manhandled him in seconds, despite the fight resembling a brawling match in a tavern rather than a proper ninja fight. Ino's opponent was also a civilian-born kunoichi. It was an easy win for the blonde, who smugly looked at Hinata after her victory, and Shikamaru gave up the very first second his fight with Shino happened. It was nothing out of the ordinary. Hinata was packing her bag because the spars were the last class in the academy for today. When Sasuke approached her again, "Why?" he asked, not specifying his question, but Hinata understood. She glanced at him and quietly whispered, "Clan matters." That made him purse his lips in displeasure, but eventually, he nodded, accepting the answer. "Fine." He opened his mouth to continue, but Naruto jumped into his face. "Oi, duck ass. Stop bullying Hi Baba." Hinata visibly winced at that, and Sasuke gave Naruto a look that clearly questioned if the blonde wasn't an idiot. Sometimes, Hinata hated Ren's sense of humor. This was totally his fault. "Fight me. I am going to beat your ass. Believe it." Naruto continued, not noticing Sasuke's nor Hinata's expressions. "Here we go again." Sasuke sighed and barely audibly mumbled under his nose, making Hinata giggle. Without even realizing it, Sasuke's lips twitched into a small smile. Later, when he realized it, he could only stare in bewilderment at the wall. He didn't know when was the last time he genuinely smiled. Chapter 38 ch 38 Playing with shadows. It has been 3 months since Ren received an unwanted observer, and recently, he was starting to get really annoyed. Enough to start planning a murder. Fortunately, 2 days ago, just a measly week before his plans were finished, his relentless stalker finally stopped showing up. It was the 3rd day of his absence, and Ren let out a relieved sigh because it meant that Danzo finally decided the observation mission was not worth the time investment considering the lacking results. It wasn't that misleading or that fooling his stalker was hard. Ren still had his daily training, and every day, he needed to make his observer follow a clone before he did it. It was a total waste of a precious clone that could speed up his training, but it had to be done. But living with the knowledge that there was a dude in the shadows, watching him and waiting for him to make a wrong move was taxing on Ren. Technically, Ren knew that Danzo couldn't waste his limited resources to have him watched indefinitely. It was a waiting game until his observer left, and that's why Ren did not intervene. But it wasn't an enjoyable couple of months for him. That said, there was a benefit to it too. As apologetic as Ren was for delaying the important training bits for Ino and Hinata, and he felt really bad because they were good enough with their chosen weaponry to move on to something different a month ago, but he delayed their progress due to the observer. It gave him time to focus on his own research and development. At least, Hinata understood. She definitely noticed the Umbu following them, and it worried her. She tried not to show it and didn't say anything, but Ren noticed how she sometimes nervously glanced in the direction of the hidden root Umbu. Danzo either didn't have anybody competent enough to evade Byakugan, or he simply didn't care about the Hyuga main branch pariah noticing his agent because she was far too young to tell that the man was not from the official Umbu. Honestly, it could be either of those two options. As for Ino, she had no idea. Konoha was still a happy place for her. Her safe zone. Ren wasn't going to cure her of that delusion, though. Maybe it was a misguided desire to protect her innocence, but not just yet. All 3 of them were now in the training ground 41, and Ren was finally about to give the girls the good news. He had a new technique and a new seal for them. Both of these had been months in the making, and he finally could share them with his students. Just considering the research data he would passively gather in the next few weeks made him almost salivate. But all in due time. Come here, Ino. Ren leaned on a tree and said to the blonde girl, who curiously came closer to him. He unsealed a scroll from the seal on his wrist before giving it to her. Read it. It's a cooperation technique, and the paper holds your part. Tell me when you are ready to perform it. As a Yamanaka, this should be right up your alley. Ino took the scroll, and the further along she read, the more focused she seemed. When she was done, she seemed to space out for a second and her blue eyes went blank, only to come back into focus 5 seconds later. I am done, she said with eyes wide from awe. That is built on some amazing concepts. Ren smiled at her but didn't feel particularly happy about the praise. Most of the principles on that scroll were already in existence thanks to Tobirama. Ren just took them apart into pieces and put them back together in a different way to create something new. So, he didn't feel as proud of the technique, even though it took him months to put it all together in a workable manner. Already? Instead of feeling good about the praise, Ren was surprised about Ino's speed. Her mind technique was unique. It was something new she found, and she had just used it to learn the contents of a quite difficult scroll about yin release manipulation in under 5 seconds. It was nothing short of amazing, despite the fact that yin manipulation was her forte. Yup, Ino slightly preened, enjoying the surprise Ren exuded. Of course, she had to boast more. I practiced a lot so I could enter my mindscape much quicker and without meditation. It's not a big deal. She finished with a smug smirk that made Hinata scoff. Ren dryly chuckled in his mind. Inoichi would cry tears of joy if he had heard her. The man would probably write entire songs about how genial his daughter is. And honestly speaking, Ren was totally going to take credit for it. Teacher's privileges. Do I want to know how much time passed in your mind during those 5 seconds? He asked and offered Ino his palm. He would definitely need to go through some tests with Ino's mindscape technique. It seemed safe to use and she had no issues despite using it for months now. But Ren was afraid of how it would affect her mental age and state if she overused it. There was a reason why new techniques were usually extensively tested. Who knew what side effects a technique that messed with a user's head, even if in a beneficial manner, had? But it was her technique, and since it was a derivative of her clan jutsu, it fell under the category of clan technique. He couldn't forbid her from using it even if he wanted, and Ino was stubborn about not telling anybody about it. Which, fair. Ren had his own share of secrets. Not much. It was just 15 minutes. Ino admitted and put her palm flatly on his, each finger facing its counterpart. Ren slowly moved his fingers and Ino followed along according to the instructions on the scroll, their hands intertwining in a singular hand seal as both Ino and Ren started internally channeling their chakra to do their own part of the technique. I still have no idea what this is supposed to do, Ino idly mentioned with her eyebrows deeply furrowed and her eyes narrowed in a deep concentration. Fortunately, Hinata was observant enough to realize she should stay quiet and let them focus, but from the corner of his eyes, Ren could see she stared at their hands with a slight envy. He felt bad about it. Hinata could certainly learn the technique too, and he was going to teach it to her too, but it would be much harder for her than for Ino. Ren went slowly, carefully molding his chakra and letting it join Ino's. He had practiced the technique, both parts, with his shadow clones, and he didn't want to interrupt her part by hurrying her along. So, their first attempt took them a solid 30 seconds of concentration. But feeling the chakra build up to be finally sufficient, Ren pushed the technique into completion as he spoke. It's the custom remake of the mental component 4- A puff of smoke appeared next to them and a bewildered clone of Ino popped into existence, looking at Ren before redirecting her gaze at her original in utter astonishment. The shadow clones. Ren smugly finished with a grin. Even though the girls couldn't yet know how much better this accomplishment was going to make their training, Ren couldn't help but feel great about the options it opened, both for him and his students. Ino and her clone stared at each other in a silent incomprehension. She knew what shadow clones were. Ren used them almost daily, but she also knew she didn't have enough chakra reserves for them yet, because she asked Ren repeatedly, until she annoyed him enough to make her run laps around the pond. She didn't even know the technique, but she had just created her own clone? No way, Ino whispered. Ren was about to say something that he thought would make this moment even more epic, but he didn't get the chance as Ino jumped at him and tried to hug the stuffing out of him in joy. I can finally use my clone to try out clothes, she squealed in pure girlish glee, and all feelings of accomplishment were drained from Ren, who promptly facepalmed. That was so not why he spent months creating a cooperation version of shadow clones. Chapter 39, ch 39, Hikari Riku still in Ino's death grip. Ren looked at Hinata, his eyes asking for help, but the traitor only gave him an amused look in return. When Ino finally stopped hugging Ren, she returned to scrutinizing her clone. But of course, despite being a clone, it was still Ino, so she would not let attention go unanswered. Hello, good lookin'. Ino's clone waved at Ino with a flirty smile and Ino just grinned back. Deciding that for his own sanity, he should not pay too much attention to their interaction for the moment, Ren turned to Hinata. Did you see what Ino had done with her chakra, Hinata? He asked, hoping that learning this technique would not be too hard for the Hyuga girl. It held an essential place in his plans for her future training and he needed her to be capable of doing it. Hinata bit her lower lip in an apparent worry. Yes, but I have no idea if I will be able to replicate it. The way of molding chakra seems to be quite complicated. Here, Ren passed her the scroll with instructions. Give it time. You will get there, he said, and Hinata resolutely nodded while opening the scroll and started reading it with determined eyes. Ren loved to see her so motivated, especially since it couldn't be easy to keep her level of determination with somebody like Ino nearby who could just pull off such a complicated technique in 5 seconds like the cheater she was. Letting Hinata to her own devices with the scroll, Ren turned back to Ino and froze on the spot when he saw her making out with it. Awkwardly clearing his throat did not help. Both Inos just released small muffled moans. Ino, Ren reproachfully started, but he really couldn't find words to say, so his speech tapered off. Thankfully, the girl and her clone separated when they heard him speak and both gave him a cheeky grin. I was just sampling the goods, Ino's clone unashamedly said. She is great. Ino nodded, praising herself. Ren rubbed the bridge of his nose. All right, Ino, you had your fun. Now dispel your clone, please. Ah, must she? Ino's clone whined. I'll be a good girl. Yes, Ren deadpanned. Having two of you is a bit much for my romantic heart, he said in a dry tone, and the real Ino released a mock gasp of hurt as she put her hand on her heart in an attempt to garner pity. The clone Ino, however, didn't even try to play the wrong party. She just put her hands on her hips and confidently grinned. PSHH. My existence brightens your day, hot stuff. Wanna try making out too? She innocently asked. Ren turned toward the real Ino with a raised eyebrow and a wide amused smirk, and the girl, who stood frozen in her spot, still with a hand on her heart, looked like a deer in headlights. Her clone giggled at her before disappearing in a small puff of smoke. Stupid clone, Ino muttered under her nose, flushing a bit from embarrassment as Ren enjoyed the moment. Moving on, hee. She awkwardly tried to laugh it off. She may act annoying at times, maybe even teased Ren when she felt particularly bold, but she never ever turned blatantly flirty like her clone had just done, and it obviously made the girl feel a bit flustered. Of course, Hinata couldn't let such a golden opportunity go. Suzuki would be so jealous, she quipped from the side. That let Ino regather her wits and she snorted, right, and Suna will experience a snowstorm. She rolled her eyes at Hinata, making both the Hyuga girl and Ren give her a weird look. They both expected a bit more. Fangirlish reply. Did you get the memory feedback? Ren asked the blonde girl, changing the topic. They were burning the daylight, and as great as it was to see the usually unflappable Ino embarrassed, he still had things to talk about with the girls. Ino blinked. Now that you talk about it, yes, I do have. She scrunched her face. Wait. Oh, getting memories thrown into my mindscape is weird. They are all over the place. Hold on. I need to dash. She suddenly took a deep intake of breath and winced as she put a hand on her forehead. I need to clean my head. This is disturbing. A few moments later, Ino was still in her mindscape, but she started to look more relaxed, and Hinata was done reading the scroll and was now fully paying attention. Next, I have another seal for you. He moved on. Oh, you could have just asked if you wanted to see me naked again, teach. Ino teased despite her unfocused state, and Hinata averted her eyes with a small blush. I'll just need to see your back this time, Ren said, causing Ino to go awe. How intimate. She started, and Ren wondered if sorting the memories from her clone was making her drop even the last bits of her usual restraint. So, what's the new seal about? Hinata interrupted with a clear interest in her expression. Giving her a quick grateful smile, Ren started explaining. It's a chakra storage seal. It is supposed to drain chakra from your reserves at all times and store it for later use. Both girls looked astonished at that and Ren's smile widened. Unlike the cooperation shadow clones, his seals were something he truly felt proud of, just a moderate amount, though. It's not very sizable, to be honest. Alas, he had to admit the shortcomings too. It was no Tsuneidzian seal that could store years' worth of chakra. But as they were now, the girls could not make a shadow clone without half-killing themselves, and this would help with that problem for seemingly no cost. With your current reserves, roughly 2 days of accumulating the chakra should give you enough to summon one clone for a few hours. It will help speed up your training a lot in the long run. That sounds great, Hinata exclaimed, and even Ino seemed a bit excited. But it was nothing compared to the Blunnet whose future hung on how strong she managed to become in the upcoming 2 years. And Ren didn't even introduce the best part yet, plus having your reserves constantly drained and never being able to become full will force your chakra network to constantly adjust to the drain as it tries to fill itself up. He finished with a boast in his tone, but it just fell flat when Ino opened her mouth. Ha! And in words that even this blonde would understand. She tilted her head and Ren's left eye twitched in annoyance. You will get constantly stronger by a very, very, very small amount each day, he grumpily explained, unhappy about having his moment ruined. Oh, why didn't you just say so, then? Ino asked in a dead tone, and Hinata giggled at Ren's unamused expression. Go do your laps, Ren ordered with a huff. Hinata's instructor should be here any moment. Do we have to? I hate the laps, Ino verbally complained, but she dutifully started stretching in preparation for the running. Ren decided to be mean and smirked at the girl. PSH. Its existence brightens your day. He threw her earlier words back at her. Ino stopped in her tracks for a moment. I hate you, she threw at Ren before resuming her exercise. I can live with that. Ren just shrugged. I would be failing as your ninja instructor if you didn't hate me. I don't hate you. Hinata ducked her head, and Ren would usually find it endearing, but now he simply raised his eyebrow at her in amusement. Oh, do I hear a plea for 10 additional laps? Needless to say, both girls disappeared in a burst of speed, running away from Ren and toward the pond before he managed to increase the number of their prescribed laps. Smart girls, Ren chuckled to himself. 30 minutes later, the girls were done with their run, and when they approached Ren again, they saw him chatting with a brown-haired woman of average height with hair reaching her shoulders. She seemed to be in her early 20s and had blue eyes paired with a pretty face. Her Konoha forehead protector was sitting firmly on her head, and she wore a standard Konoha flak jacket, everychin and hat, and black pants. The woman was Riku Hikari, the teacher Ren hired through the mission board to teach Hinata how to properly throw senbon. Look at them, Ino whispered to Hinata when she saw Ren and Hikari laugh at something. They are totally flirting. She bumped her shoulder with her. No, they aren't. Hinata rejected the idea with a frown, and Ino didn't answer because they reached the two ninjas. I am sorry, I won't be able to come tomorrow. I have a mission with my team, the girls heard Hikari say, and Ino's eyes sparkled as she got an idea. In a typical fashion for her, she instantly decided to act upon it before thinking it over. Why don't you two go together? Ino abruptly asked, surprising all 3 other people around. Ren released a considering hum. That actually sounds nice. He was coped in Konoha for 3 whole months. Well, not really. He took trips to the capital almost every 3 days, but on paper, he technically stayed in Konoha for all that time. He glanced at Hikari. Yes, he could go with another Vaka dash, another mission. The chakra storage seal would need a week to settle in the girls' chakra network, so they were going to have a break from training anyway. Is that fine? He finally asked the woman. I'll tell my team. They should be fine with it. Hikari answered with a satisfied smile that rubbed Hinata the wrong way. I look forward to it. The 2 older ninjas started discussing the details when Hinata turned toward Ino, her posture hiding a subtle anger. What are you doing, Ino? She asked the blonde girl in a hurried whisper as she poked her in the ribs. Ino blinked and looked at her. As good students, shouldn't we at least try to get our teacher a date? Of course, she did not expect the woman to actually agree. She had never heard of a team taking in an outsider for a mission before. That was a miscalculation on her part. Hinata let out a muffled, frustrated sound in her throat. She glanced at Hikari, who sported a small pink dusting on her cheeks as she chatted with Ren, and her mood soured further. But, I don't want him to get a date, she sadly mumbled under her nose, causing Ino's eyes to subtly widen as suddenly, a realization hit her. Chapter 40 CH40 Easy Supply Run. The next day, Ren arrived at Konoha's gate, only to see that Hikari was already there with 2 older men, talking and laughing like old friends. He released a small sigh of relief. Accepting to go on a mission with Hikari was a spur-of-the-moment thing for him. Only later did he consider all the problems that could happen. His main concern was that her teammates would not want an outsider they knew nothing about to join the team. And it was a valid concern too, so Ren had no idea how they would react to his inclusion. He was relieved they didn't look angry or tense. For the most part, Ren just wanted to get out of Konoha for a week. Not behind the scenes, but officially. He was going to enjoy the week out on a mission, and then he could continue worrying about Danzo's next move. Thankfully, he had Hinata checking with Byakugan when he gave Hikari some probing questions after hiring her, and according to her, Hikari did not lie. The woman probably did not realize it, but that's the biggest reason why Ren could be at ease near her. He was certain she was not one of Danzo's. Then there was also the fact that Naruto now seemed to seek him out, which would inevitably get him unwanted attention from Sarutobi. It's not as if he could just evade the boy either. That would just be a dick move, considering that most of the village already does that. But nobody could complain if Ren went on a mission. It's what ninjas do. No, he was certainly not running away from his problems. This was, a tactical retreat for a week so he could regroup his thoughts? Yup, he decided he would call it that. He approached Hikari and her team, waving at Hikari who noticed him and turned toward him. Hello, I am Ren. Chunin. Sorry for intruding. He spoke to the two men. No worries, man, it will be safer with four. I am Norio, a Chunin. We are happy to have you. A dark green-haired man said in a laid-back manner with a lazy but welcoming smile on his face. Yeah, welcome to the team. I am Sarutobi Kaido, Jonin, and the lead of this team. The older man introduced himself and Ren barely refrained from freezing at his surname. He wondered if it was just a coincidence, but then he decided to not dwell on it. There was nothing he could do about it anyway. Kaido put the cigarette he held into his mouth and lit it up with a rudimentary katan jutsu before he put his hand on Hikari's hair and ruffled it as if she were a kid. This girl was so worried about our reaction. She really likes you, ya know? He said with a wide grin, which made Hikari flustered. Shut up. She harshly rebuked him and poked him hard in his ribs with her elbow, making the Sarutobi man visibly wince from pain, but he didn't stop grinning through it. He looked at her with concern in his brown eyes, and disturbingly enough, Ren could not tell if the man was faking it or not. I was honestly starting to worry you won't find a man, but I see everything is alright, Kaido happily said, and Hikari looked in embarrassment at the ground. We are not, she mumbled, but Ren spoke at the same time. We are N. They both stopped when they realized they were speaking in sync, and Kaido's grin widened even more as they unsurely looked at each other. Well, Ren had to admit that Hikari was pretty and he did like her big blue eyes and shoulder-long light brown hair. He may or may not have checked her out 1, okay, 2, maybe 5 times during the period she trained Hinata. The woman was a kunoichi, so Ren didn't have any illusions about her not noticing. But like responsible adult teenagers they were, they approached the topic in a very mature fashion and had a tacit understanding, so they never mentioned it. Honestly, Ren was just too busy to consider girls unless the topic was blatantly shoved in front of his face. Alas, he had Ino under her care and she had a very big mouth. Of course, Kaido sagely nodded at them and clapped Ren on the shoulder. Just don't wander off together into the bushes during the mission. Leave taking her virginity for after we come back to Konoha and we are golden. He gave Ren a thumbs up and evaded a senbon thrown by the embarrassed Hikari. Ren felt pretty flustered too, but he just took a deep breath and dryly said right. He knew Kaido's type. The man was like a shark. He smelled blood, and encouraging him would just make him tease them more. Deep down, however, Ren had decided to give it a shot and ask Hikari out after this mission. He quite liked the woman, both her personality and how she looked. Giving it a shot would not cost him anything. Good. I have enough trouble with one troublemaker on the team, he said, and threw a glance at the green-haired Norio, who was silently snickering to himself and enjoying the show. Blinking his equally green eyes at suddenly being the center of attention, Norio clicked his tongue. One time. I fell for the honey trap one time, boss. He rolled his eyes, making Kaido huff. Abruptly, Kaido's grin fell as the man turned serious and entered his work mode. He took out a mission scroll and all 4 of them instantly tensed, paying full attention. Alright, boys. He gave Hikari a small smirk and tomboy. The woman's eyebrow twitched, but she didn't react further. This is a standard easy supply run. We reach our destination, drop off the supplies and sealing scrolls, and get back to Konoha. It should be quick and safe, but be on guard. We are still going into an active war zone. Anything could happen. War zone? Hikari worriedly asked, and Kaido nodded. We are bringing supplies to an outpost in the land of waves, he announced, and Ren had to restrain himself from face-palming. Of course, it would be the land of waves again. Honestly, he should have asked where they were going before accepting. What are the chances this will go pear-shaped? He idly wondered with a forced smile as he listened to the rest of the team briefing. It's not as bad as I feared, Kaido said as they entered a small town in the land of waves and started walking through its main street in a civilian disguise. This town was their last stop before they reached the Konoha outpost in the country. So far, so good. Nothing out of the ordinary happened, and Ren was happy that he could enter the country without encountering an S-rank ninja or something similarly ridiculous. With his luck as of late, it just might happen. Then again, it was a ridiculous notion. There were less than 100 S-rank combatants in the world, and the world was as big, if not bigger than his last one. The chances of meeting one of them were very low. Most ninjas could do missions their entire lives, even participate in wars, and never actually encounter an S-rank enemy. It's just Naruto who is the child of destiny, but it basically just meant the sucker has worse luck than Tsunade when it came to random encounters. You were here in the past? Hikari asked as she looked around with a sad gaze. The town was ramshackle and the people looked visibly poor. Yes. On a mission with Kurane Ui, Ren idly answered, too preoccupied with observing the people to notice the small frown on Hikari's face at the mention of Kurane's name. Wait, isn't she the bitch who killed the local overlord and started this whole mess? She doomed these people, Norio asked in surprise. Yeah, Kurane did not have a good reputation in the village right now. Rumors and all that. The only reason Ren was not impacted by it as much was that he was just a Chunin under Kurane's lead, so despite giving her that idea, she held the responsibility for her actions. but he really didn't feel like letting people shit-talk Kurane for doing something good. On the contrary, she saved them, Ren said in a serious tone, looking Norio straight in the eyes. The man was caught off guard and unsurely nodded that he understood. You can't be serious. But Hikari did not see Ren's look and spoke, unhappy at the state of the town. Just look at them. It's miserable. She pitied them. Ren sighed, his shoulders slumping, and yet, it is 10 times better than what it was a few months ago, he said, and even Kaido looked a bit uncomfortable at that. The conversation ceased right there and then. The people, they seemed to be much happier than when he was here the last time. They seemed to actually have hope for a better future. The conflict between Konoha and Kiri happening in the Land of Waves was unfortunate, but it brought jobs and money for the local people. Yes, some of them would die as the result of said conflict, but the rest? They would recover, and once the conflict was finished, the country would be much better off, no matter who won. It was an objective win for this country. It's not as if the usual ninja conflict was a full-blown war. Mostly it was just shadow operations and assassinations or small skirmishes that rarely impacted the local populace. Obvious war crimes were reserved for the major ninja world wars, which this was not. I feel bad for them, Hikari finally said as they left the town. She sighed as she reached into her pocket and retrieved her Konoha headband, binding it around her forehead. The other members of the team followed before they picked up their pace, desiring to arrive at the outpost before the sun went down, but it seemed the fate was not on their side today. Barely 10 minutes outside of the town, Ren's face scrunched up in a "are you freaking kidding me" way. Seeing an enraged Yagura in a two-tailed Baijuyu shroud chasing two people with featureless umbu masks who were running straight at their group in a clear attempt at aggro transfer, Ren had a hard time believing his eyes. Fuck me, he whined, causing his frozen teammates to shake their shock off and burst into action. I knew I shouldn't have come to this country again, he exasperatedly thought just as Yagura started charging a Baijuudama right in their direction. Chapter 41, Ch 41, Fighting a Mad Jinchuriki. In the anime, it always seemed so slow. The Jinchuriki needed to gather the red and blue bubbles, condense them into a purple ball, and then either eat it and shoot it or shoot it. It took a while on the screen. In reality, it all happened in a split second. Ren barely managed to put his palm on the ground and push his chakra into a ring he wore on his right hand, causing a seal to rapidly spread on the ground. But by that point, the beam from the Baijuudama already engulfed the two blank masked umbu, instantly vaporizing them without even slowing down. The seal finished forming exactly half a second later, just a few milliseconds before Ren's team was drowned in the energy beam that disintegrated everything in its path while carving up a massive crater into the ground. The beam continued for several miles until it finally stopped and exploded into a fiery orange ball reaching almost 100 feet in the air and causing a shockwave that devastated the surrounding land. The ground violently shook and the world was drowned in a loud booming noise, but it all lasted only a few seconds before the ball disappeared and both the noise and the earthquake quieted themselves. Almost hyperventilating, Ren barely resisted the urge to fall down in relief as his legs grew a bit weak. He and his team stood on a solitary small island made of earth within a massive crater stretching into the horizon, completely fine. Holy shit. We are alive, Norio whispered in disbelieving joy, staggering in his place and shaking like a leaf as his mind registered how close to death he was. Hikari fell on her posterior, staring with wide eyes at the devastation around her. She was most definitely still in shock, and Ren didn't falter. Facing average Chunin on missions is far different from facing a Jinchuriki. They were called monsters even in this world full of supernatural punch wizards for a reason. Ren mentally winced a bit as he realized where the Baijuudama landed. Well, there went the city they just left. Kaito, the only Jonin in the group, threw Ren a surprised glance before returning his attention back to the Jinchuriki in front of them. He was the only one of his teammates who weren't numb enough from relief that he forgot the fight was not over yet. No idea how you saved us, Ren, but any chance you could replicate it again? He asked, his tone trying to be firm, but Ren could plainly hear the undertone of nervousness within it. Ren wryly smiled. No. That was a one-time use seal and it was the only one I had. He didn't exactly expect to face off against a Baijuudama this early in his life. Jinchuriki were supposed to be rare. There were only 9 of them in the world. What are the odds he would encounter one on a random mission? He was mostly preparing to face S-rank ninjas. Even the seal that saved them was not made with Baijuudama in mind. It was a space-time barrier. Yes, amazing. He was aware of his own genius. Unfortunately, it was also supposed to be a last resort thing as it took a massive amount of chakra. Ren had to spend a week casually charging the seal he just spent to allow for one-time use. He had felt so smug about it too, when he created it. With the chakra he gathered, he could probably block 5 S-rank techniques with it in a pinch. But there went all that effort. Yes, it could block the closest equivalent to an atomic bomb this universe had outside of Deodara's terrorist fuckery. But Ren didn't feel very accomplished right now, because he was well aware that unlike him, the Jinchuriki were not limited to only one Baijuudama. I see. Kaito spoke only for his eyes to quickly widen alongside Ren's, and they threw themselves onto the ground just in time to evade a swipe from Yagura, who appeared out of nowhere in a burst of speed. Sadly, they didn't have the time to warn Norio, whose upper body was instantly pulverized on hit, and only his legs kept standing as a shower of his blood and gore fell on Kaito, Hikari, and Ren. Ren didn't hesitate and connected a chakra string with Hikari, forcefully pulling her toward him just in time to avoid Yagura smashing her into a bloody smear with a downward strike. Fortunately, the woman quickly regained her wits because Ren had to stop paying her much attention as a handmaid of Yagura's chakra cloak tried to grab him and he had to jump away while throwing an exploding kunao at Yagura. If he had been grabbed, he would have been done for. The exploding kunao hit its mark but the Baijuya cloak tanked most of the damage and what little got through was stopped by the corals that now covered Yagura's skin like armor. The attack seemed to only piss him off more as he released a menacing growl, showing he was not all mentally there anymore. Kaido and Hikari started their offensive too, with Kaido throwing Katan ninjutsu at their opponent while Hikari tried to hit him with Senbon. Ren did not let up his attack. He threw an exploding kunao after exploding kunao even if they only managed to stagger Yagura and cause him to focus on defense. After throwing 5 exploding kunao, Ren had the idea to mix in a kunao charged with wind chakra and was rewarded with an enraged scream from Yagura when the wind chakra allowed the kunao to bypass the coral armor and wound his arm. Should have gone for the neck. Ren admonished himself as he saw Yagura's blood leak out from his wound and start to mix with his Baijuya cloak. Kaido definitely deserved his rank because the second he saw Ren's attack working, he started doing something similar, infusing fire-natured chakra into his thrown weapons, but it had a diminished effect on the Jinhyura ki. Ren threw another wind-charged kunao at Yagura only 2 seconds after he got wounded but his wound was already quickly closing, making Ren inwardly curse. He aimed for the neck this time but Yagura crouched and crossed his forearms. Ren's breath hitched and he braced himself for an impact. Naruto blasting Haku and his mirrors was his favorite scene in the anime. He damn well recognized what Yagura was about to do. A split second later, a shockwave threw all 3 ninjas back, rattling their bodies as they speedily impacted the ground in a painful roll. They all managed to push themselves on their feet from the roll relatively quickly, though, showing their experience. After regaining his balance, Ren's eye snapped back toward Yagura, only to see him touching the ground with his chakra cloak going. "Jump!" he screamed, already mid-jump. Kaido managed to react in time but Ren could only watch as Hikari was speared straight through her stomach by Yagura's chakra cloak that burst from the ground underneath her, lifting her in the air and making her release a high-pitched scream full of burning pain. The horror started filling him and deep down, he knew it was futile but he still quickly threw a wind-charged kunao at the place where the cloak came out of the ground in an attempt to cut it off from Yagura to make it dissipate in order to save her. But just a split second before the kunao cut off the chakra cloak, it expanded, ripping Hikari's torso into pieces from within her stomach, silencing her forever as her legs and head were all thrown in different directions. Her death hit Ren hard. When Kigo died, he felt bad. He was a cool guy and Ren could have seen himself becoming a good friend with him in time, but he had still only known the man for 1 day. But he knew Hikari for a few weeks. He liked her enough to decide to ask her out. The initial spark was there and Ren's heart clenched. But this distraction cost him. Yagura had 2 arms and 2 tails, but only 3 chakra cloak appendages have burst from the ground so far. Ren had just barely landed on the ground again, feeling the inklings of grief hit him hard when he noticed the ground slightly moving under him. Without hesitation, he created a shadow clone a few meters away from him. The clone barely popped into existence only to be destroyed a second later as Ren substituted with it, causing Yagura's 4th chakra cloak appendage to spear through him and pop him out of existence. Ren winced both at the memories of burning pain going through his upper body and the wasted chakra. He mentally shook himself. He could grieve later. Now, he had an angry Jinhyura ki trying to murder him. Unfortunately, he didn't get the protagonist's treatment. His opponents did not monologue for half an hour in the middle of the battle. Ren once again substituted with what was left of Norio and landed in a puddle of the man's blood and gore before weaving a small genjutsu on the surroundings around him to buy himself some time for a breather. Kaido landed near him in Shunshin and seamlessly integrated himself into the genjutsu, tears streaming down his cheeks as he winced at seeing Norio's gore on the ground. It told Ren the man too witnessed Hikari's brutal demise. But the Jonin was fully focused on the enemy in front of them. "Any idea? Because we are not fast enough to run away against a damned monster like that," he asked in a downtrodden voice. Ren nervously licked his lips. "Don't let him get 3 tails." Kaido resignedly chuckled and Ren grimaced. This was not the time for jokes. He had no idea how much time he had before Yagura again engaged them. Mad Jinhyura ki were unpredictable. He quickly removed a few paper tags with seals from the storage on his wrist and handed them to Kaido. "Try sticking that on him? It's untested but it's the only thing I have that could work," he said. They were his yin containment seals and he had no freaking idea if they would do something to Yagura at all. But nothing as convenient as chakra suppression seals that one-hit KO at a Jinhyura ki existed. Jiraiya could make a seal with that function for Naruto because he had the key to Naruto's seal. But there was no universal seal you could slap on an enraged Jinhyura ki and make him go to sleep. They wouldn't be the nuclear option for villages if something like that was a thing. "I guess this will have to do." Kaido nodded, as enthused about the fact they would need to get within arm's reach with Yagura to get the seals on him as Ren was. But then Yagura suddenly roared and another shockwave rippled through the air as his eyes narrowed in their direction when the genjutsu just shimmered into non-existence under the heavy onslaught of Jinhyura ki chakra, revealing their position. The time for talking was over. 10 seconds. Ren mentally grumbled. That was not nearly enough for him to activate his transportation seal. With a glum heart, he interrupted the activation of that seal. He wouldn't get the remaining 10 seconds he needed for it anyway. Yagura was already charging at them again. Chapter 42 Ch 42, Monster Kaido jumped away while Ren spat a wind bullet at Yagura, causing him to dodge. This brought Ren a few seconds, just enough for him to unseal 6 special sealing tags and scatter them in the wind. Abruptly, shadow clones appeared in the place of every single ceiling tag and Ren almost keeled over from using so much chakra at once. He didn't have the chakra reserves for 6 shadow clones, but fortunately, he did have a full chakra storage seal that covered the cost of 4 clones. One clone grabbed the still recovering Ren around his waist as all of them scattered in different directions, just barely before Yagura appeared at their previous position, and brutally slammed his hands onto the ground, creating another small crater and sending a shockwave through the air. Fortunately, Ren's clones were the variant with durability seals in them, so they did not dispel from a minor hit even when the shockwave had blown them away from each other. Yagura stopped and leaned forward, opening his mouth slightly, and Ren instantly felt chills go up his spine when he recognized he was going to fire another Baiju Udama in his general direction. Thankfully, in a desperate move, one of his clones reacted in time and Sunshine close to Yagura and loudly smacked a paper tag with the yin containment seal right onto Yagura's forehead. This unbalanced his chakra enough to make the small blue balls of chakra dissipate before they could merge with the red ones, and the small core of forming Baiju Udama just fizzled out of existence before it could fully form. Ha! That work, ugh. Ren's clone spoke, but in the middle of it, he was speared by Yagura's outstretched arm right through his chest. Glaring at Yagura, the clone let out a painful whine as he grasped Yagura's arm, and instantly gravity seals started spreading from his hands all along the arm. It was a difficult endeavor because he also had to keep his existence intact while the chakra that formed him was leaking out like crazy due to his injury. Realizing he didn't have long, the clone redoubled his efforts and tried to make the gravity seal as restricting as his limited time allowed. Yagura, even in his mad state, quickly realized he was in danger and his other arm moved in a blur, smashing the head of Ren's clone into a pulp and dispelling it. Ren and his other clones winced, happy that they wouldn't be getting memory feedback from each other thanks to the sealing tag within them having a yin containment seal of its own. But Ren and his clones were not idle. Just as Yagura disposed of the first clone, several wind-natured kunao instantly hit him, most of them sinking handle-deep into his flesh and making him roar in pain. Sadly, the most important ones aiming at Yagura's vital points were repelled by his coral armor, only managing to make shallow cuts on his skin that healed almost instantly. It didn't matter. Ren vindictively smirked. The kunao in and around Yagura exploded into a hail of fiery metal shrapnel while most of them were still within his body. But Ren's smirk fell when he heard Yagura still roaring in pain even after the explosion. How tough is he? Ren whispered the question under his nose, his face twisted in horrified disbelief that the Jinchuriki was still alive despite being basically exploded from within. Come on, this is blatant cheating. Both he and the clone near him had to jump away as Yagura appeared near them and almost managed to hit them with a swipe. The man was in a very bad shape. Ruptured organs and cracked bones were visible in the numerous holes of ripped flesh all along the man's torso. Yet, he was still kicking and screaming. Literally. Worse yet, he was healing at a visible rate. Suddenly, one of Ren's clone's hands burst from under Yagura and grabbed his ankles, pulling him to the ground with a headhunter technique while also applying additional gravity seals during the contact. But Yagura was not done yet. Not by a long shot. The ground cracked from the sheer force of his struggle and Ren felt his clone in the ground dispel just as Yagura pushed himself from the ground and crouched, ready to pounce despite his feet sinking into the ground from the added weight of the gravity seals as the violent and bloodthirsty red chakra was blasting the surroundings, making Ren's hair stand from muted fear. Another clone appeared right behind Yagura in that instant, slapping yet another yin containment seal on his back and unbalanced Yagura's chakra enough that his pounce failed. He tripped, tumbling through the ground. 2 other clones of Ren instantly joined the fray, intending to put more gravity seals on Yagura, but he was ready, and before they could even touch him, Yagura's 2 red tails smacked them away with enough force to dispel them despite the durability seals. Ren grimaced. He only had 2 more clones and Yagura was once again standing up. 16, 17, 18, whoa. He had to interrupt the channeling of the transportation seal once again because he had to jump away from Yagura, who despite being totally unbalanced and leaning too much to the right due to the gravity seals all around his right arm, was still fast enough that Ren was barely evading him. The Jinchuriki are really monsters in combat. Ren sourly complained as he dodged one of Yagura's tails. Fortunately, one of his 2 remaining clones jumped in and distracted Yagura enough that Ren could create more distance between them, but he didn't forget to spew another wind bullet just as Yagura turned toward his clone. The bullet managed to hit his back, making him puff out his chest as the razor-sharp wind ragged across his back, creating many cuts. But that's all it did, and the cuts closed almost instantly. Yagura did not even look at Ren despite the attack, fully focused on his clone. Ren cursed, wondering where the hell was Kaido. It was why he started channeling his transportation seal again. He was half sure that Kaido ditched him. He was proven wrong when the second remaining clone of Ren suddenly appeared from the devastated tree line alongside Kaido, both flaring their chakra high. The clone engaging Yagura widened his eyes and realized they were about to unleash a cooperation technique. He quickly disengaged, just in time to prevent himself from being engulfed in a massive torrent of flames courtesy of Kaido and empowered by a wind technique from Ren's other clone. Yagura, who stood with his back to them, didn't manage to react in time and was bathed in flames. Once again, he let out a scream of pure agony and Ren winced when he saw some of the kunao shrapnel still within his body melting. He really wanted to look away, but he knew how costly such an action could be in a fight, especially against Jinchuriki. It was still a grisly sight. On the outside, Yagura was being cooked by the dense flames while on the inside the molten metal was burning through his flesh, organs, and bones. Ren barely managed to keep his lunch from evacuating his stomach through his mouth. Yagura swung his left arm and the shockwave pushed the flames away. His two tails in his right hand grabbed the ground and tore chunks of earth, hurling them at Ren and his two remaining clones with shocking speed. Ren threw himself onto the ground and rolled underneath the flying chunk of hardened earth when he heard Kaido shout. Ren's eyes snapped toward Yagura as his roll stopped and he pushed himself back on his feet, only to see Yagura attempting to form another Baiju Utama in his direction. Again, the Jinchuriki was already halfway done too, his injuries thankfully slowing the process somewhat. Realizing he didn't have enough time to evade nor interrupt Yagura, Ren gulped, primal fear for his life rising within him, when he was abruptly pulled away from his position via substitution thanks to one of his clones who intended to sacrifice himself. But it was not needed. Oh, no you don't. Kaido suddenly appeared in front of Yagura, kicking him in the chin and making his head snap upward just a split second before he released the Baiju Utama, causing it to fly into the sky before it detonated far above them. The ensuing shockwave still pushed Ren and his clones to the ground as the whole area violently rattled due to the loud booming explosion that colored the horizon fiery orange. Unfortunately for Kaido, he felt as if the heavens suddenly fell onto his shoulders while Yagura was not bothered by it almost at all. With wide eyes, Kaido could only watch in rising horror as Yagura grabbed his shoulders with his hands. Ren subconsciously whimpered as Kaido was ripped into two pieces and Yagura roared in victory. Just then one of Ren's clones substituted with one piece of Kaido's corpse that lay directly to Yagura's left and slammed another two yin containment seals onto him. Then he used Shunshin to disengage before Yagura could retaliate. Surprisingly, the red chakra around Yagura somewhat retracted into his body, leaving the man silently standing in his spot, swaying slightly in the violent air current caused by the Baiju Utama explosion while bleeding all over the ground from his considerable wounds. Ren hesitated a bit before speaking in a hopeful tone, "Are you in the mood for a reasonable conversation?" He really prayed that. Yagura suddenly ripped off one of the yin containment seal tags and the red chakra came back, enveloping his body with a renewed force. Gar. Yagura's red eyes looked at Ren with ferocious hostility within them as he flared the full weight of his killing intent at him. "You gotta be freaking kidding me," Ren whispered in resignation with a grimace on his face. "A like tells us you want more stories like this. Thanks for supporting Infinite Novel."